You're gonna get a lot of backlash, I think, because if you have both volumes.
Well, I'll just mute this one.
Yeah, but you're still gonna hear it. Oh, mute the, okay. So mute yourself.
Let's see.
Hey, Greg,
Yes.
I just want to confirm that that we are live streaming this on Facebook
Right now we are. How you doing?
and obviously recording then too, right?
Both.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Morning.
Bill.
Hey, Justine, good morning.
How are you?
Fine. Are you going to read off all the preliminary stuff? Did you want me to read it off? I'm fine either way.
I figured I figured I would do it, but if it doesn't matter to me, that works.
That's fine. That's fine.
And then I will, and so we'll open our meeting
Mhm.
and then I'll turn it to, and I'll read that and then I'll turn it to you.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect.
And Greg said that it's live streaming and we're recording as well.
Yep.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we were mentioning all that during our opening.
Oh, okay. All right, I can do that. Greg, were you able to turn the comments off for Facebook Live, or should I somehow make a note that those comments are not being monitored?
So to the answer, the first one is no, because I even though Janelle Franklin tried her best to like show me how to do it, I couldn't figure it out. I'm looking at it right now. And then the second thing is, yes, you should make those. You should kind of
Okay.
clarify that we're not monitoring the comments on Facebook.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Oh, there's my
Janelle tried though. She even like did screen grabs and red circles and everything. For some reason, man.
it's okay. At least you haven't turned any of this into a cat, so that's good. That's all we'll go with.
Yeah, just stand by for that.
I'm not sure I need that. Um, all right.
Good morning, Kate.
Hey, good morning, Lydia. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Exciting about the MSBA, yeah?
Very exciting, very exciting. It's such an important step forward. Once you get the okay, it's going to feel like it will consume much time, but
Yeah.
the product and the end result is just going to be stupendous. So very excited. It's always interesting where you're grouped when the high schools come up, because you see across the state what the needs are and where and how everyone's making investments that are
Yeah.
important but challenging. Everybody
Yeah.
has to.
Yeah.
I know, I thought it was interesting that Neshoba and our area came up at the exact same time for this one.
Yeah, and it is. And then you see Amherst and the such a different area in some ways. And then some of the larger cities and their needs are just fascinating.
Absolutely.
But it's all about educating the kids and creating an environment for them that works. And Lord knows they deserve it after this year.
I know.
I'm going to make this bigger and see. Everybody is beginning to gather, I see.
Few more people.
Oh, it's been such a week. It's been wild.
Well, congratulations on your new assignment.
Thank you. It's good for our district.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad.
We have it. Armin, David, Jeff, Chris. We got all of our guys. It feels different not being in the library, I'm not gonna lie.
It does. I know, it's like you can't really say as much. You should keep yourself circumspect. It's just hard. We're humans. It's like when we get into the chamber where it's very protocol specific, and there are 20 people in there. There are vote monitors. It's how we're doing remote voting. But you will just see legislators. They're like, it's almost like they got to get in a group and start talking. And we're all humans. We're so human in that way. You put any of us together and we begin to form groups that like to chatter. And
Absolutely.
I miss the meetings so much. The Zooms are just, but there'll probably be lessons learned and some best practices we can get out of this too, to save time and be more accessible too.
Mm-hmm.
Strangely enough, right? Maybe.
I think before we weren't willing to give it a shot. Now we had no choice. So we can take what we've learned here and apply it back to in-person meetings also.
Yeah.
Because we've done this.
Well, it's kind of cool that you also stream your meetings, so you can. It's neat. I'll be flipping through a Facebook. I put up a post. I'll notice that the selectmen, board meeting is up. It just, you're not going to sit through and watch the whole thing, but it certainly gives you that feeling of transparency and government in action and things like that. And I think it's a great message.
I was gonna say, I think we've had some more participation
Oh, yeah.
and more people seeing the meetings because they can do it from their homes.
Yes. Hey, Lana, nice to see you.
Hi, Kate. Thanks for being here.
Congrats again, Kate.
Say where?
I said congratulations, Kate, on your new position.
Oh, thank you so much. Who am I speaking with?
It's
I'm not.
Armand.
That's Armand, Kate.
Hey, Armin, you're not up on my Facebook. I've got to figure out
Oh,
my view
Got
here.
you. No
I want to
problem.
see everybody. So gallery view we go. There it is. Thank you, Armin. It's good for the district.
All right. I have 9:00. Well, let's see. I have 9:01 and I know my board is here. Ken, how is it looking for your board?
I was just looking around to make sure I had a quorum.
We can wait a couple minutes if everyone's not here and you're expecting them.
Let's see here. I'm only seeing 3 so far.
Yeah, I think we're short.
Okay, no worries. How does school committee look, Lydia? Cool, excellent.
Yeah, we're just missing Bethlyn, but we have a quorum.
Okay, sounds good. Now, are you going to open yours as well? Did you post this as a meeting for you?
did.
as well? Okay, all right. So I'll open the meeting and give the remote script for all of us. Then I'll turn it to Ken, and then Ken can turn it to you, and then we'll all be.
Okay. Thank
Perfect.
you.
No worries.
I can't be part of this meeting. Greg doesn't have his outfit on.
He's not in the standards, but the standard place in his
I thought
house.
you wanted they let him out of the basement on Saturday.
It's a special. You're right. It's special. It's cold down there. Couldn't do it.
Yes.
Cold everywhere today.
It is.
Never got my
Cold.
cookies, Greg.
I know. They're in the mail.
Not cold in Florida.
So Justine, we can go ahead and get started. We have quorum now.
Okay, all right, sounds good. Well then, good morning, everybody. It is 9:03 and I'm going to open the meeting for today's joint budget review. As a preliminary matter, this is Justine St. John, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So I'll just do my board. So members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. It's going to be Chris,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Armand,
Yes.
and I am here. And I will, Greg.
Yeah.
All right, I know you're expected to speak, and I know Chief Stowers is here. He'll be speaking as well. And then I see Superintendent Haas for the schools, and so we will continue on. Good morning. This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of the emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order allows bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. However, we may entertain some comments if there is time from the public. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. It is also being recorded and broadcast via Facebook Live. However, comments and questions are not being monitored. The only way to ask any kind of question would be to log into the Zoom and then actually speak. We are not monitoring chat and we're not monitoring Facebook Live. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All the materials for this meeting, except any executive session materials, are available on Board Docs, and we recommend the members and the public follow the agenda as posted on Board Docs unless the chair notes otherwise. So the best way to do that is the Maynard Town page, Board of Selectmen, today's date packet will bring you to the Board Doc agenda for today. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda after they conclude their remarks. We'll go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. We're not going to be having items of public comment. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting, there are no votes for this public meeting, but if there were to be a vote taken in this meeting, it would be conducted by a roll call vote. And that being said, I have confirmed that everybody is here, so I will turn it over to Ken Estabrook, Chair of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Justine. And, I would concur with everything that Justine had said about sort of conducting the meeting. Just remind everybody to mute their mic when they're not speaking. With so many people on, just too much of a chance of having extraneous noise. I'd also say that while we're probably not going to have time for much of any public comment, certainly all boards, the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, Finance Committee, and others would remain open to your comment. This is a beginning discussion in our budget process, and so certainly we would welcome your comment at the upcoming meetings of the various boards. With that, I'm going to do a roll call vote. Alana
Yes, here.
and Jill. Jill,
Yes, here.
Peter,
Yes.
and Kelly.
Here.
And is Tom or Elliot on? Okay, so we have a quorum. I'll turn it over to Lydia at School Committee.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Justine. All right. School committee members, when I call your name, please acknowledge that you're here. Mary Branley.
Here.
Jessica Clark.
Here.
Bethlyn Houlihan.
Here.
Natasha Rivera.
Here.
And Lydia Clancy, I am here. And I also want to mention that Jen Gaudet and Wayne White are also here and may speak on behalf of the school. And Colleen Andrade will be sharing her screen, I believe, when we present the budget, our budget. All right, thank you, Justine.
All right, sounds good. So just a quick thing, which is basically, as we all know, but anyone who's listening, what we're holding today is the joint budget review. And by town charter, on or before the 15th day of February, the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee holds a joint budget review meeting. And we typically invite or require the town administrator to attend to give us his overview. We also request representatives of multiple departments, and the school committee, because they are a large part of our budget as well, are obviously invited to attend because we're trying our best to collaborate as a town and use our resources wisely. We also have members of the Capital Planning Committee that they will be speaking as well. And actually I did not ask them if they were going to open their meeting, but we'll have them present their capital plan for the for FY22 as well. And I look forward to this. This is, I think, my 4th or 5th that I've been to. And one thing that I have noticed is that the transparency, we talk about transparency in town government a lot, but the transparency in my mind has changed so that a lot of the conversation we're having today, it shouldn't really be too much new information for all of us, but it's the opportunity for us all to be in one room, if you will, to discuss it. Because we've all been hearing about this since mid-January for the official budget, and before then with the planning of it. So with that, I'll turn it over. Ken, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think it covers it all. Thank you.
Great. All right. Sounds good. Are there any public comments before I start? Okay. And with that, I would like to turn it over and invite State Representative Kate Hogan to speak for us.
Thank you, Justine, and hello to everyone in Maynard today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and just very briefly give you a 500-foot view, but also I have the opportunity to listen to everything that is happening on the ground in Maynard. The governor has proposed a $45.6 billion budget for the state. The budget season should go on. We are in remote voting right now as the process by which we create legislation, and that should bring us through to the end of the pandemic when we all begin to gather together again. The COVID relief package is part of the governor's budget, and in some ways will be synthesized into a final budget through the House and the Senate, uses a mixture of federal and state resources with a focus, of course, on schools, small business, and economic development as we move through. There will be nothing that we touch in the legislature this year that will not have the hand of recovery on it in mind. It's absolutely essential. We hope to maintain a focus on health and safety, education, and continue to work on the pandemic. That the rollout has been very troublesome. We're working as the House to look at many other ways that we can use both state and federal resources that are coming in to ramp up and make these sites much more easy and accessible, and to make local boards of health and other places like community hospitals available to people for vaccination sites. It's a focus for the House, and we continue to form our committees and be able to present ways in which we can have an influence on what's going on with the vaccine rollout. I think an important thing I would like everyone to know is that both Governor Baker and the legislature will be in full support of the Student Opportunity Act being fully funded for the coming year. We also see that there'll be some Chapter 70 increases. We're not sure how. We really are looking to the feds to let us know what's going to be happening. I've been in touch, of course, with Lori Trahan's office. We'll continue to stay in close touch through the legislature as well. I know there's a 1.9 trillion stimulus package proposed by Joe Biden, and that's 170 billion dedicated to K through 12 schools and higher education, and as well as significant spending to prop up state and local governments in terms of any of the impacts from COVID. Until the devil is in the detail, as we sit here today in budget discussions, so we know and await that in more detail. We also have the recently released American Rescue Plan, which outlines about 130 gap in funding, and the need for us to fill that gap, $130 billion gap in funding, so that we can open safely in all of our cities and towns and regions. Those are probably the most important things to point out right now. I'll be working, of course, with the town. We're going to have a visit from Housing and Economic Development Secretary Keneally is coming out and going to tour some of our projects that we're working on as we look towards grants and other ways that state and local government can work together. I'll be working closely with town managers and the board as we look to see what earmarks we might be able to appropriate for the town of Maynard, as always looking for our commuter and senior transportation, which we've been able to fund in each of these budget years. Even as they came quickly and upon each other, we're able to do that funding. So that is an outline for me of what we're looking at as we approach the budget. I don't want to take too much time, but if anyone has any questions, or if you would like more information, I'll certainly share this as it comes in to the State House, and as it comes out of the federal government, and we see what kind of stimulus money is coming down to the towns for both education and for our to shore up our municipalities as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions?
I have a quick question, Kate, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. We can pass it along. Maybe the schools will have, Brian or Wayne will have some insight. You mentioned during your comments that the Student Opportunity Act will be fully funded by the legislature and the governor. And I'm wondering what that impact might have on us and on the Maynard school budget. And if there is, when we would learn about any funding that comes through and how that gets used.
We'll be seeing it as it comes down through the federal government in their budget, and it will be, begin to become apparent as the state budget formulates. What I don't know right now, and we're going to have to wait and see, is how the monies are going to be appropriated and in what ways. So what I can tell you from the Student Opportunity Act is that no one will be receiving less money than they received in the past, and every student will be receiving, it's the $30 per student agreement through the Student Opportunities Act that is going to be so important for FY21, I think. And there'll be about $26 million in additional funding for charter school reimbursement. I think that's important. And then 22 million in additional support for special education and circuit breaker reimbursement. So as those things begin to appear, I think that you'll see that there's more support for the schools as we begin to open. I know that we've been through such incredible times, both for students, for teachers, for the municipalities, and that everyone is going to need a lot of help to get us both up, running, and then looking at what we need to do to help our students recover from this year and more.
Thank you. Could the schools quickly, and maybe we can wait until their presentation, but that Student Opportunity Act funding, when it comes through, has that already been built into your expectation on your budget, or is that going to be additional revenue that you will see beyond what we've already heard
This is
about?
it's all part of the budget. So
No, I'm talking about locally. If the school has
Oh.
already anticipated that money coming in as part of the budget that they'll be presenting to us today, or if that's additional revenue that will come on top of what we'll hear about today.
Brian, do you want to answer that?
Sure. Morning, everybody. So given that it's an unknown at this point, David, like the Student Opportunity Act was supposed to be fully funded last year, everybody would have planned for it accordingly, but then they sort of took it off the table, if you will. And now it's presumably back on the table as part of some bigger package. We have not included it directly yet because it isn't confirmed. As Kate said, I think it's coming down. We're just not sure when and how. And if it, detracts from some other area to become part of the Student Opportunity Act, I don't know if the bottom line changes drastically.
I just want to be open about that there might be some additional revenue coming to the schools down the road that we need to just be aware of when we're talking about funding. And I realize it's just one-time money. It's not guaranteed for the future. So it's got to be somewhat targeted to certain things, but just to be aware of it.
Thank you. And thank you, Representative Hogan. Thank you very much for coming. You're here every year and we really appreciate it. So with that, I will turn it over to Town Administrator Greg Johnson for the FY22 budget presentation.
Thank you, Justine. Good morning, everyone. I am Greg Johnson, the Town Administrator. I see a lot of faces. I don't think I see any new faces, so probably everyone recognizes me. So let's get into it. What I'm going to be presenting is what has already been uploaded to Board Docs. But of course, per usual, bear with me and my technical skills as I make that happen. All right. See, now I'm already having problems making my PowerPoint full screen.
We just won't edit it. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. Can anyone who's never not muted, anyone not see the PowerPoint? I think we should get. Thank you, Justine. All right. So this is.
What is this titled?
Town of Maynard Budget Hearing Fiscal Year 2022.
Okay, well, I understand what I'm looking for what it's titled in the board docs.
Oh,
It's titled FY 2015.
no, I think is it?
4 of them.
No, I think it should be the first one. Go to the town administrator recommended, but does it say?
Yeah, I
think
got it
it's
now.
okay. Sorry.
Item 3.
All right, very good, very good. I didn't realize there was graphics in the slide changes. So, all right. So the budget process as it stands right now, we are in about the middle of my development of the budget, which started way back in the summertime, where we first start to think about where we may be for Proposition 2.5 tax growth, where we might be for new growth, what sort of like demands we currently have or demands we have forthcoming. However, this year, as everyone is well aware, is strange in a lot of ways, primarily because of CARES and COVID and trying to take in consideration all the uncertainties that are out there in the world and impacting Maynard. That being said, Maynard has a lot of exceptions to what is happening in the greater world because we already had a lot of new growth coming on, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So here we are, February 13th for the joint budget review. And then I will be, now that what you see in today's presentation from me is a reflection of the January 21st submission of my town administrator recommended budget to the Board of Selectmen. And even since then, we've gotten some information, for example, the governor's House 1 budget. This is not a reflection of House 1 budget. So I will be presenting my recommendations on how to incorporate House 1 budget to the Board of Selectmen at a future date, but that is not what you're going to be seeing today. Town meeting is still anticipated for May 17th, 2021. We'll have to figure out if and when that's going to happen and how we're going to do it, but going on. So here's where we are with the current fiscal year, FY21. This is pretty standard. Total expenditures is 45.4%. And right now we are $20.2 million in revenue receipts. And this is as of December 31st, so about halfway through the fiscal year. Okay, so to form the budget, first we look at the revenue. And so as no surprise, the great majority of our revenue comes from real and personal property taxes. Although, of course, as you can see, we are reliant on state aid as a 12% of that, and 6% is local receipts. Now that local receipts number, I'm going to get into in a little bit because there's something to highlight. Nothing what I'm saying right now, I think hasn't already been said in public per Justine's comment earlier. But this is a good sort of graphic to show just how reliant we are on the various revenue sources. I have to move my Zoom screen so you guys can't see that, but I need to move everybody around. All right, so the budget, of course, the revenue that for the budget is an accumulation of all the different revenue sources. And as you can see, the great majority is from property taxes. And even state aid is a significant portion of that, and it will fluctuate as the budget will then go, as it is right now, into the House and then the Senate joint and then back to the governor's desk. And then we'll find out what our final budget will be in many months from now. So as far as property taxes, we started with our levy limit. What I had done originally is set the levy limit according to what the Board of Selectmen had proposed for to set the tax rates back in October. They set up the levy limit according to how much new growth and Proposition 2.5 we were going to receive. But as some of you may know, I will probably be proposing to use all of the levy limit as opposed to what the selectmen had done, which is use almost all up to the levy limit when they set the tax rate for this current fiscal year. I will probably be recommending to use the entirety of that levy limit. This is a conversation we've had earlier, but I'm just illustrating right now that this number may not be the final number when in the weeks to come. New growth is obviously an important consideration when it comes to revenue. The town is actually doing well. The economy is stronger than you may think during a pandemic, which is the result of years of planning and then the developments coming to getting off the ground and whatnot, particularly, of course, Maynard Crossing. So this estimate is a conservative estimate, just as it was last year and the year before. We try to be conservative in our new growth numbers so that we can have a good problem, so to speak, come a year from now, or less than a year from now, when we set the tax rate. That tax rate will be a reflection of what the true new growth will be, and hopefully it'll be much higher than this. But we try to be conservative to sort of hedge our bets going into the budget development. And this is just a graphical representation of the new growth over the years. Last year, we had a very good year, as you can see, which is our current fiscal year, 2021. For state aid, this is a reflection of the governor's budget. Here's a significant consideration from the governor's budget, which is $233,530 decrease from last year, and the major factor to that is the charter tuition reimbursement was significantly lower than what we had projected. Admittedly, we had projected a level funding for state aid, so knowing that there would be some sort of fluctuation, higher or lower, but $233,000 was the net change from state aid from FY21 into the governor's FY22 budget, and I will show you how that all looks on a spreadsheet in a minute, but we will need to solve for that $233,000. We are still collecting MSBA, which is the Massachusetts School Building Authority, for the projects that we've had in partnership with them in the past. And as we all know, that number will change not only in FY23, but when some of that state aid is going to fall off because of those school projects are being paid for and come to completion, but in anticipation of a Green Meadow School project, however many years down the line, so that number will fluctuate. And then here's just a spreadsheet representation of the topics I've been reviewing, but the number I do want to point out to is at the bottom. Can anyone see my cursor? I'm sorry. Can we see the cursor?
Yep.
Okay, good. So what I'm circling with my pointer is at the bottom right-hand corner, which is that deficit, so to speak, that we will need to solve for. And that deficit is the result of the major factor of that charter tuition assessment reimbursement number, which is a decrease of $260,000 from current FY21. So in FY21 we had 441,000, but you can see it went to 175. And this is something to point out that Superintendent Haas had pointed out correctly, that 441,000 was an outlier. So our current charter tuition assessment reimbursement for FY21, our current fiscal year, that was significantly higher. And that number, and I think the school department can speak to this more, is supposed to be, my understanding, is supposed to be a reflection of enrollment plus reimbursements for those enrollments, which is, I believe, determined by a formula at the state level. So why we had such a higher level in FY21, I couldn't tell you at this time, but you can see that the trend went back to where it was. $175,000 is more in line with all the other years if you exclude FY21. So we'll need to solve for that 233. And this is just a graphical representation of the trend. Local receipts, which for the most part, there's we're doing the best we can. You can see there's a lot of zeros, so this is all estimates, but we're doing the best we can to look at the historical trend of local receipts, as well as look at our current intake of local receipts and try to predict how they might be for FY22. One thing I do want to point out is within these numbers is a expectation of marijuana receipts. So we do get we will be taxing marijuana sales, and so this shows $125,000 worth of marijuana sales, and that number could be hopefully much higher than that. But we want to kind of be conservative on all our budgeting for that, so it's only at that level. And if it becomes higher, that's a good problem to have. We'll have more free cash. This is a slide I show every year. It's just a description of what indirect charges we have. In other words, we subsidize or we collaborate with other funds, which is which goes towards other departments like water and sewer enterprise funds. And so the budget is an accumulation of all those collaborations. Ambulance receipts is something that the town had been reliant on for years, or at least in the last, this would be my third budget in the last 2 years. We had been transferring money from the ambulance receipts to subsidize the general fund. However, that plan changed when we committed to funding a new ambulance through ambulance receipts. So we are not reliant on ambulance receipts to subsidize the general fund, or at least that is the intentions. PEG access, which we get as, which is revenue that we get from Comcast and Verizon for the use of our infrastructure, the right of ways. So that primarily funds school programs, which my understanding is WAVM in particular. Something I do want to point out is we are expending more than what we're taking in for that revenue, which is a trend I've been pointing out for the last 2 years. And so right now estimates will be that we will overcome our revenue in the next fiscal year. So this fiscal year, we're still balanced, so to speak, but the next year we will not be. And that doesn't mean, what that means is that we'll just have to accommodate that imbalance through the general fund. This is kind of a complicated concept, amortization of bond premium. So there's just another revenue source that we get as we due to our debt scheduling and bonding. And debt exclusion, of course. So the debt exclusion, for those of you who are unfamiliar, we tax up to a certain amount in property taxes that is dictated by general law. And then if you want to tax above that, there's a couple different methods. One of those methods is called a debt exclusion. So it's excluded, so to speak, from the Proposition 2.5 tax collection law. So you can tax above it, but you can only tax it for a specific project over the life of that debt. So the proposal right now is to, which was approved by town meeting and at town meeting vote, is to fund 2 projects, the fire station and the Green Meadow roof. So those numbers are part of revenue, although it kind of comes in and goes back out in a way to just pay for those specific projects. We also do have debt service for enterprise funds for the water and sewer projects. But that debt service comes through the utility rates. And so I know that's been a discussion amongst the Board of Selectmen, but that is also a consideration. And this is a graphic representation of our trends with debt exclusion. You can see FY22, significant increase because of the firehouse in particular. All right, now we get into how we're going to spend that money. So this is a busy spreadsheet, so I'm going to go into the details in a bit, but this is just we extracted this spreadsheet from the budget model that I've been showing to the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the Budget Subcommittee. And you can see the growth of the budget as it goes through the years. Now, this is a nice pie chart to show where the money is going. So this is not atypical in any way. So the education is the largest piece of that pie, and debt service, public safety, public works. We know that these are a lot of the major expenses. Fringe benefits, so employee benefits is also 19%. That's also a significant expense. But this is not atypical to most towns and municipalities. General government looks like it's a significant increase, and it is. But one of the major driving factors for that is the capital pay-as-you-go, not program, but initiative. So for a long time, at least in the last 2 years that I've been recommending a budget, we've been reliant entirely on free cash for capital needs, but we're trying to move away from that model because free cash is relatively unpredictable. So in order to have a sustainable approach to capital, if you incorporate it into your operating fund, which is this model, then you can start to budget better for capital needs and maintenance and sustainability of those capital items. So this shows $121,000 worth of capital items, which the Capital Planning Committee will show in their presentation following. Another significant increase for general government fund is our property liability insurance, which was an increase, as you can see on the left-hand side, $81,000, which was expected because we knew that we had a lot of claims filed for renovations and abatement to the Green Meadow Elementary School, and insurance paid, they contributed a lot to those renovations. So now we're paying the premium in return. Public safety, a couple of the major themes is that there's been reorganization amongst the police department. They also have some new hires. With those new hires comes payment, benefits that we pay for those new hires. A lot of them have degrees, which is a very good thing, but those come with costs because of their collective bargaining agreements. We are right now in the negotiations with the police unions, but that's difficult to budget for. So right now it is an expectation that it's those contracts the current contracts will remain in place, but of course we'll have to adjust the budgets accordingly for whatever the results of the negotiations are. Another thing I want to point out is that we were successful in negotiating with the firefighters union and the primary purpose of that negotiations was to incorporate in-house training or bridge training so that we're not so reliant on the Stowe Fire Academy, so we can continue training in-house. So those budgets, which is not a significant increase, 1.35, but those are some of the big factors into that. Public Works, which is not a significant increase, 1.24 over FY21. I think Justin DeMarco is doing an outstanding job of managing his budget in relation to all the operational advances on Public Works, especially Maynard in particular, amongst all our neighbors, where we have a city's worth of infrastructure. And so I really want to commend Justin and the rest of his team for doing a lot with a little, and he continues that. I do want to point out though, and actually let me go back. One thing I do want to point out with the public safety account, and this is something I'm going to point, or similarly, I'm going to point something out with the Public Works, but for public safety, one thing that was not recommended in this budget, which is something that the fire chief and I are in agreement with, that's something the town does need to consider, is the establishment of a deputy fire chief position. But that is not in my current budget recommendation. So in the Public Works, a couple of items that are not budgeted for in my current recommendations are a part-time custodian. So when we had Kyle and Tim Goulding as a team, and they were handling the facilities maintenance and custodian management of the town buildings, Tim is gone. Well, I haven't backfilled that position. So yes, we transferred money over to the school department so that we could establish we could support them in their facilities management. But we don't have a Tim right now, over in the town side. So Kyle's doing a great job of keeping up with it, and Kyle really has taken on more responsibilities in managing the bigger projects for the town's facilities. But he's also playing custodian, so that's a struggle. A couple other items that we're not paying for to the way I think we need to be paying for, which is MS4, that's stormwater management, tree and right-of-way vegetation maintenance. So we try to make do with the little bit limited money that we have when it comes to tree maintenance. But inevitably there will be some items that we're not able to get to, I think, as well or as quickly as Justin was preferred to, as far as tree maintenance. So per usual, we'll just ask for the patience of the residents and the community as we do the most we can with the budget that we have. Snow and ice services is something else I do believe that the town needs to address better in our operating funds. Right now, we're reliant on free cash to supplement the snow and ice budget. Snow and ice has been set to $117,000 for many years, and that should be going up. Like we should be contributing to snow and ice maintenance more every year, and we have not been. Cultural and recreation, and this is primarily the library, and I do want to point out the big takeaway from this is that we do have a new library director, Jean McGuire, who I think is on the call right now. And so Jean just came on board. So I'm basically telling her how much money she has. But I do suspect when she gets a good grasp over the budget, she'll have recommendations. Education, I'm not going to touch on this too much. I'm just going to kind of hit the wave tops. And you can see the graphical representation. We are continuing to contribute as much as we can to education within our means. My proposal right now is an increase of $1.044 million, which is a 5.21 increase over FY21's final budget. And again, that final budget is what was set in October at the special town meeting. Although I also point out, admittedly, that my recommendation is $758,000 less than what they had budgeted for, or what they had requested for. But I also want to point out that this is not the end of the story. So even as Representative Hogan was pointing out, the budget is not complete at the state side. There's still federal funds on the horizon, potentially at the federal level. So this is not to say that this is set in stone. This is only based on my recommendation from January. I also am pointing out that in the Assabet Valley Regional Technical High Schools, the vocational school for the region, that they did have an increase, although they communicated with the town that they are able to use ESSER's money, which is the Education Variant of Cares money, to offset some of that assessment. And that will be my recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. I know I'm going very quick here, folks, but that's all I do. Employee benefits will continue to rise. We're not atypical across the nation for the cost of healthcare and other benefits. So that is continuing on the rise. Right now, this is set to a 5% increase for health insurance. That's our biggest factor for benefits, is health insurance, as it always is, and that's how it is for most organizations. So that 5% represents a $146,000 increase over our current fiscal year. That 5% is relatively conservative, and I hope that we get a lower number. And if and when we do, then I will present that to the Board of Selectmen with recommendations on how to use that budget that would not have to be budgeted for health insurance. Debt services, as I've already alluded to, is going up because we are taking on more debt as we pay for the fire station project in particular, but of course, as well as the Green Middle School roof. So we are assessed, this is just sort of other items. We are assessed by the state and the county for certain services that are either regionalized or go to statewide. So this is just showing that changes. And two other items that we do pay for, that we do budget for every year, is of course the reserve fund for $250,000. My recommendation is not to change that at this time. And then we also set aside a reserve for abatements. It's the overlay, we call it. And right now that's set to $240,000. I'm kind of wrapping up because you'll see I don't want to get into I don't want to steal the thunder of the new capital planning committee, but I do want to point out some of their funding sources, which is free cash. So our free cash was high for our purposes of this budget process, $841,000. We have had higher, but $841,000 is quite high. And with that, I was working with the capital planning committee in their development of a recommended capital improvement plan on how to use those funds. But two major drivers in my recommendations for the use of that free cash is, of course, snow and ice, which my recommendation right now is $300,000 to offset the cost of snow and ice maintenance. I hope that's enough. You never know. But if it's not enough, then we're going to have to deal with that when the time comes. And then the other major factor is replenishing, in a way, the general stabilization. So for $300,000. And the reason I recommend that we do that is because we withdrew $1 million worth, or at least we set aside $1 million worth of general stabilization for the feasibility study for the elementary school. Although, as everyone knows, approximately 50% of that cost of the feasibility study should be reimbursed by the MSBA, but we still had to appropriate that full $1 million at town meeting. But so if that leaves approximately $500,000 worth, I am recommending that we immediately start replenishing that amount, and I'm proposing 300,000 more. Okay, so this is a spreadsheet showing what I just said, and with a couple of other factors: capital stabilization, OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, and then you can see the kind of the rundown of one-time capital, which will be pointed out by the capital planning committee. Just said. Does someone have a question? I'm sorry, I'm only looking at my PowerPoint. Does someone have a question? No. Okay. This is a slide I like to show every year, which is estimates, and I do want to heavily emphasize estimates for the tax bills. So current, which is FY21, current average single family household valuation is $407,000, which results in an estimated average single family tax bill of $8,417,000, and that's current. So I had Angie Merriman, the chief assessor, look at what may be the tax bills based on my recommended budget proposal. So if this is using that full levy limit, if this is using that $500,000 growth, then the average single family tax bill increase based on my recommended budget right now is $360. And a good portion of that which is $210, is for debt exclusions. Again, this is not set in stone in any way, but I do like kind of show a somewhat of a sense of where your tax bills may be. All right, so that's all I have because there's a lot of other people who want to talk. Let me stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Greg.
No problem.
I think what I would like to do, if it's okay with everyone, is I would actually like to hold the questions and discussion until after we've done all of the presentations. Ken, do you agree with that? Yep. Okay. All right, then what we'll do is we'll move right on to item B, which is actually the CARES funding status. CARES factored a lot into our budget for the FY21 budget. And so we just wanted to see where it was. And so I had asked if the chief could kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of that.
So,
Hi, Chief.
hi, how are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good.
Chief, I can either share my screen if you have it, or you can share your screen. I don't know what.
It's going to be easier for you to share your screen and I can speak to it if
Got
that's
it.
all right, because I'm a little technically challenged.
We're gonna make it. So I'm for the public, I am sharing the board docs presentation.
Perfect.
All right. So are you going to, am I
Yeah,
going to?
I'll drive and you tell me when to move.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's, we're going to do an overview of the CARES Act spending. And keep in mind that there's actually two funding sources for CARES Act. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. There's two different funding sources to deal with COVID. One is the CARES Act and one is FEMA. So basically the FEMA declaration started when President Trump declared a national emergency in response to the pandemic. FEMA was directed to start tracking and reimbursing states and communities to help deal with the COVID disaster. This made us eligible for economic relief, just like it did with the state. Anything related to public health. All right, go ahead, next one. So FEMA is a little interesting, and to be fair and honest, it's been very difficult dealing with FEMA. As you can see on the slide, I'm not going to go through everything word for word, but as you can see, these are some of the costs that are eligible for reimbursement with FEMA. One of the most frustrating parts is, as you can see, number 3 says disinfection of eligible public facilities. Well, they didn't define eligible until September. So, obviously we have the library, we have the schools, we have the town hall, we have police and fire. Those are public facilities, but we didn't know exactly what was considered eligible, but we had to do all of them. So keep that in mind as I go forward. Some of the other things that are covered by FEMA are not necessarily related to what we would have here in Maynard. like field hospitals and things like that. We obviously don't have a need for that, or shelter or anything like that. So next slide. The FEMA program is designed to cover only 75% of the costs incurred. So the way this works is we come up with our list of needs and we submit it, and then they determine whether or not it's covered. And then if it's covered, 75% of that cost is actually covered. So early on, we got a ruling from the Office of Local Services, Local Government Services, that yes, anything that you spent on FEMA that wasn't covered could be covered under the CARES Act. So again, FEMA determined that the only public buildings that would meet the criteria for eligibility, and again, they did this late in the game, were the police stations and fire stations, any place that houses first responders. Next slide. So this is what we've done here in Maynard. Obviously, we've disinfected and cleaned and continue to do that. All public buildings in Maynard, any place where there's employees, any place where there's the public can come in. We've worked really hard, and I have to give a big shout out to the facilities department, especially Kyle Maynard. He's done a fantastic job of managing that whole process from a community standpoint. We also worked with MEMA to secure personal protective equipment, and a big shout out to MEMA too. They've done a fantastic job of making sure that we get that. We've purchased sanitizing equipment, sterilizing supplies. We've rented equipment as necessary to conduct outdoor annual town meeting and a special town meeting. We've backfilled for exposure infected first responders, and we have had some. Next slide. In June, the CARES Act money became available. Communities were allotted funds based on a per capita basis. Maynard was eligible for $940,485. Now, the CARES Act is very specific in what you can use it for. And as you see on the second slide, the smaller bullets, it can only be used for things that are related to COVID or of the public health emergency related to COVID. You can't use it to substitute for lost revenue. Expenses must not have been budgeted for as of March 27th of 2020, which is right after the president declared the national emergency. And the expenses must have been incurred between March 1st and December 30th. So the original CARES Act, which we're still working under, by the way, was set to expire on December 30th. The government, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the government extended it through December of 2021. However, as of yet, there's no more money with it. Now, I'm sure that there's going to be another relief package that comes out. So, but for us, we still have money left, and I'll get to the balances later, but we didn't get more money with that. It's just extended it so we could continue using what we were already allotted. And again, some general areas for CARES Act funding are first responder costs, direct staffing, quarantine or isolation costs, which we really haven't had. The only issue that we've had is backfilling first responders that needed to be out. This includes hotel and motel space, and again, we haven't had to use that. Some communities have, we haven't. Next slide. For more permissible uses, these are temporary staff to backfill or sick or quarantine municipal employees. Again, city and town management, administrative support, janitorial, fire and police, I believe are the only ones that we have backfilled. Could be used for a certain trash collection and then other. Again, it's as long as it can be related to the CARES or to the national emergency, the COVID related, it wasn't budgeted for, and it's not being used to supplement a budget. Again, compliance, staff for compliance and reporting, we haven't done that. We haven't hired any, as far as I know, we haven't hired any, well, I know we haven't. We haven't hired any additional personnel for compliance and reporting. I've been doing that, and what little hair I have left is rapidly falling out, I can tell you that. It was also used for accelerated telework capacity, and we've done a lot of that. So I think somebody alluded to it earlier that we've basically opened up government and we've been much more inclusive. We've allowed people to work from home. This right here is an example of telework. So a lot of people are probably using work-related computers and things like that that we were able to purchase under the CARES Act. PPE. we did it a little differently, I think, than some other communities did. We purchased PPE for the whole community. And my thought behind that was, first of all, we didn't have a definitive idea of what was covered at the time. This was back in July. We had met with the school, and it was before Wayne White got in there. It was when Irene was still the business manager. And we took their recommendations of what they wanted with, as far as PPE goes. And then we took the rest of the town's needs, and we combined it all into one. We created one cache of PPE that we can distribute as needed. So, and I thought that was a good approach to it. So, and it's easier to track it that way. So we did that. Again, sanitation. That me?
No. I'm trying to mute everybody, but if you're not muted, please mute.
Sanitation and refuse collection, we really haven't spent anything on that. We have spent some money on food inspection with the outdoor dining and the restrictions that have been placed on restaurants because of the COVID crisis. We've had to use Beth a little bit more than normal. And this also includes some work by Kelly Polichonic. Next slide. Again, we talked about this a little earlier, and we did this before we knew it was going to be covered by the CARES Act, but we've done all these things. The disinfection and cleaning has been going since this whole thing started. The air filtration systems at Green Meadow and the high school, I believe, have been addressed. The school distance learning. And as we get to the slides on what the costs are, you'll see that this was probably the most expensive single category that we addressed. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Chief.
That's okay.
All right.
So this is an interesting, and this actually changed, this development actually changed yesterday. We're still awaiting final approval of funds requested from FEMA. So we initially requested, I want to say right around $100,000 in reimbursement from FEMA. The total that came back was, said about 40,000 was going to be covered, and then 75% of that. But yesterday they announced that they're redoing that, and it looks like the government now is going to cover 100% of the costs requested of FEMA as long as it meets eligibility. So in one sense, that's good. We'll get more money. In another sense, it's a little frustrating because we still don't have a definitive idea of what's covered. And that might not sound like a big deal, but it does impact what we can spend under CARES, because we only have one pot to pull everything out of. If FEMA's not going to cover it, it has to be covered by CARES. That's one of the reasons that I've been real careful about not to overspend our CARES money, because if we get caught short on FEMA, the town's going to be on the hook. So again, these numbers are going to change, but CARES Act, just keep in mind, CARES Act is a little different than other grants. It's based on anticipated needs. So what we've done, and we're going to do a third request shortly, but we've done 2 draws. So we basically fill out a spreadsheet and say, this is what we think we're going to spend the money on. And we submit that. They vet it, they look at it, and they say, okay, well, we'll give you this much. Now, it all comes out of our $940,000. So as you can see, our first draw request was for $626,000, and then we got $348,500 out of it. Now, the difference between those two is a lot of it they thought was going to be covered by FEMA. So they just say, well, that's covered by FEMA. And then it comes back, it's not. So it's kind of a shell game, it really. Our second request was for $435,000, and we ended up getting $337,500. So far to date, we've received $686,000. That leaves us with about $254,000 left. Next slide. The local process for this is, we've tried to funnel everything through me, because it's easier to have one person, I think, be the contact person or the point person. So we don't order too many supplies, we don't miss things, and overall it's gone fairly well. The finance department created specific account, so when a invoice comes in, we just pay it out of that account. All departments were sent a memo in July outlining spending process. Most of the invoices have been processed through myself. So like I said, they'll come into me and I'll put them on a warrant, and submitted to the finance department, and they get paid, and they get all paid out of the same account. Everything that we've invoiced so far, everything has been reconciled. It's all been processed and reconciled through December 30th, because that was our initial deadline. We've since incurred some more costs, and that's okay. It's just, to date though, everything's reconciled. It meets up perfectly with what we think we spent, what we've actually spent, and what we can document. Communication between the fire chief, school business manager, and other municipal department heads has been ongoing, and overall it's been very smooth. We had a few bumps in the beginning. Part of that was turnover on the school, which is nobody's fault. We had a new business manager and a new superintendent kind of come through after we had been dealing with the CARES crisis for 3 or 4 months. So, but we quickly overcame that, and it's been working very well. All right, so the costs that we've incurred so far in multiple categories, and I've already talked about that. IT is the biggest one. Cleaning, disinfecting, protective barriers, rental equipment, things for the annual and special town meetings, PPE, and some smaller categories. Next one. So again, the way my brain works, it's easier to do things that are logically to me. So I've broken down each of our spending categories by department. So obviously you see DPW, that's the Department of Public Works, and the Facilities Department. So things that Kyle has ordered for other departments, we've categorized that through them. Fire, police, library, town hall, council on aging, and then town, I put PPE because that's its own category. So under the town where it says PPE, that's PPE, and now it's also added COVID testing. And then of course the schools. So you'll see this is how it's broken down so far. Obviously the largest number is for the schools, and then there's still some outstanding purchase orders that, even though we haven't spent it yet, I've considered it spent because it's committed. They have purchase orders outstanding for Chromebooks and things related to remote learning. But the biggest category again has been remote learning and remote work. So there's a breakdown by each particular department. Keep going. Yep. So this is what we spent to date, $607,000, and spent or committed. Again, the FEMA projection is going to change. It looks like it's going to change, but right now it's about 38,000. And then the anticipated CARES commitment to date is right there, 500, just under 570,000. Some challenges, lack of clarity from both FEMA and CARES. And I understand that this is the first time something like this has happened on such a large level for the country. So you can cut people some slack, but by the same token, it has been very frustrating. We'll be on our end of it thinking we haven't done something yet, and I'll contact the CARES people or the FEMA people. They say, well, we haven't really addressed that yet. So it's been a little frustrating because we don't want to overspend. We don't want to overcommit and then not have that money come back. So that has been a little bit frustrating. It's been a challenge ensuring all invoices go through me. And it's not been a big challenge, but it has been a little bit of a challenge, especially when we first started. Some misunderstanding about how CARES can be spent. I think there was a underlying feeling that we could just use it for whatever we wanted to in the beginning, and that's not the case. So it needs to be spent on certain things, and they have to be related to the COVID crisis. We can't spend it on anything other than that. So there was some miscommunication on, whether we spend it on things that were previously budgeted and things like that. So filing paperwork has been very challenging because each agency, the Division of Local Services or FEMA in our case, they do things differently. So that's been a challenge, but we're overcoming it. Again, we're still incurring costs, and some of these costs moving forward are things that we're still doing, at the local level, and anticipating costs moving forward are vaccination clinics. We are, and Greg I don't know if he's going to speak to this later or not, but we have been working with the public health agent and some other departments on planning some vaccination clinics for our senior citizens or people most at risk in school and other employees moving forward. So we will incur some costs for that. That looks like 100% is going to be covered by FEMA. But again, when we planned for this, we weren't sure of that. So either way, we're going to be covered. Our next reporting date for CARES is actually February 27th. They've actually moved that back. It looks like it's going to be in March, which again is good, but that's going to be what's been spent as of December 30th. And again, the challenge there for me is to say, okay, well, we spent X amount on CARES, but I don't have a definitive number yet from FEMA. So until I get that number from FEMA, it's really hard to say what we're committing to CARES. Hopefully it's going to be less than the slide I showed a little while ago, because more will be covered by FEMA. But until we know that, that's kind of a little bit of a challenge. And again, we've been in contact with FEMA, and I had anticipated reimbursement numbers soon, but again, yesterday they came out with a determination that it looks like more is going to be covered. So that might slow that process down, but we're doing the best we can. Again, as I mentioned earlier, to date, everything reconciles. Everything that we've spent by department, by community, reconciles with what finance is paid out and what they track us having spent. So that's good. We're still incurring costs, as I said. Some of the things moving forward that we probably won't have to address again are PPE. We bought a lot of PPE, which is good, but we should be well stocked through this pandemic and even another one, if we have another one. And I'll continue working with the other municipal departments in the schools to make sure that everyone's needs are covered. And I think there's one more. Or is that it? That it?
That's it.
Thanks, Chief.
Does anybody have any questions?
All right, then thank you, Chief. I really appreciate you having presenting today a little bit, just because like I said, this is kind of obviously this is a foreign source for us, and we haven't really talked about it yet to date. So I really appreciate being able to kind of get a handle on it. I appreciate the work that you're doing with the finance team. I know Mike Guzzo, worked with you closely. And probably still a little bit working with you as well, Wayne White and the schools. And I just really appreciate all the hard work you're putting in to this. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, then let's move on to the school committee FY22 budget presentation. I believe Superintendent Haas, are you going to give that? Or Lydia, go ahead.
Thanks, Justine. Yeah, I just wanted to preface, normally the chair gives the presentation, but technically this is the superintendent's budget until the school committee votes to adopt it. And so we felt that it would be more appropriate to have Superintendent Haas present it and explain his reasoning behind it. So, Brian?
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody. I think a lot of people on the screen have probably heard the majority of this presentation already, but let me start by just saying, as a new face in town and first time officially through the budget process here, I just want to thank a handful of people as we're here. I've been working, with Greg Johnson as town administrator. He's been a great partner in terms of the budgeting and just working collaboratively to come up with a budget that supports the schools and meets our needs, and also we're cognizant of the town's needs as well. And other people on the screen that I see that I know we're in constant communication with around issues that all have budget implications. So Chief Stowers has been a great partner all year, especially in the middle of a pandemic with all these new grants that have come down that we've never had to deal with before. Justin DeMarco on DPW, again, a great partner and helping Maynard and specifically the schools move forward. Chief Noble, I want to thank him as well. We have an SRO, and that's just one of the things that makes Maynard strong as a school system. So those people, and again, all throughout this process, we've met with the Board of Selectmen, we've met with the Finance Committee, and it's been a really open, transparent process. So thank you to those bodies as well. The school team, it's been an interesting team because we have some of the team that's brand new. So Wayne White, our business manager, Wayne White, Jeff Ferrante, Student Services, and myself come with a fresh set of eyes. And also on the team, we have Jennifer Gaudette, who's got the historical and institutional knowledge of where we've been and where we're going. So combined, I feel we've been a strong team moving forward. And likewise, and I don't want to leave them out at all, would be the school committee. And some of them, as you know, they've been around quite some time. And they're, institutions in the town of Maynard, and other members of the school committee are new to the school committee. And that group of 5 has been a powerful force moving forward and helping me as superintendent really build the budget appropriately. So just thanks to all those different groups, I think we've gotten to a really great place moving forward, as an advocate for the schools and recognizing what the town has, the ability to do at this point in time historically in the middle of a pandemic. And then I don't want to forget the last person, because she's going to share the screen. I'm not, would be Colleen Andrade, who behind the scenes, super important, really is the glue that keeps us all going. So when I even see some people clapping, that's excellent, and she deserves it. So let me get on with the presentation, which again, may not be a lot of new information, but it's an opportunity for me to share it with you. So who doesn't want to hear a quote from Nelson Mandela? I think we all do on a Saturday morning. Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. How can we not go wrong starting with that? So next slide, Colleen, thank you. Yep, that is a nice introduction. There we go. So when we started our process, we really looked at how do we move us forward? Where are we at as a school system? What do we need? How can we really push the envelope? And we came up with a budget for $21,829,456. I would say, as an advocate for the schools, reasonable number. And it tells you this is all of our contractual obligations. It's support for special education. It restores some positions that the school budget has been reduced multiple times in the last year and a half or so. And it had, quite frankly, almost $400,000 in additional positions to move us forward in terms of programming. But we also, so I'll just leave that like that. But we're cognizant of what the town, where the town's at. So of that $400,000, this tells you, hey, in our opinion, this is what we need to do. This will help us move forward. So we looked at an additional literacy coordinator / administrator at Green Meadow, increasing preschool staff, increasing guidance secretarial staff, a nurse, additional support for our EL students, additional custodial support. And I think all of these completely reasonable. They're solid asks and they're good for the school system. Next slide. But, so here we get to the next slide, and this is the but. We're also in the middle of a pandemic, and the economy has been challenged and families are challenged. So we realize that that's a good ask, but realistically, the 21,435 is a really strong maintenance of effort budget. So we took a step back and said, what do we really need? We really would love 21.8, but we would, $21,435,000 lets us meet our contractual obligations. And this is a funny term, because I think sometimes people think contractual obligations is simply salaries. And salaries is the majority of that. There's no question. But for a school system, contractual obligations include a variety of other things. It includes that. It also includes all of the extras, the things that make schools special. So for example, all the extracurriculars, the music, the stipends, the athletics, the professional development, the stipends that, we pay for people to do the things that go above and beyond. And it's funny, those are the things, that's why kids come to school so often. They love the music program. They love WAVM. They love the basketball program. It's one of the things that draws them. So that's a big number for us. And it's important to us as a school and as a community. It also, within that number, provides support for special education expenses. The fact is, special education expenses go up every year. It's outside our control. It happens. We know it. We have a circuit breaker account to help with that. That's one of the things that the state has in place for us to help, but it doesn't do it all. It definitely doesn't. So the operating budget picks up a major piece of that. So within this 21,435 is $253,000 of support specifically for those expenses that we know are coming. That's not a guess. And that's not all of it. That's still us using circuit breaker, operating budget. It's just support for that expense. And it allows us, if we're going to make any strategic improvements to address revenue program deficits, we'll have to do some reallocation. And we are prepared to do that. So this slide, really the intent of this slide is the colors. So you can see the 4 big chunks, if you will. The purple, the blue, the red, and the green. They make up almost the entire pie. And what stands out to me is they're student-centered. They're about our students. They're about the students of Maynard, special education, Maynard High School, Fowler Middle School, and Green Meadow. That's who we are. So that's where the money's going. There's a little bit of money. And I say that, generally in district transportation, IT, maintenance, business office, etc. But the majority of our money is going to the students. Strategic initiatives implemented to address, so things that we've done and sort of how this fits into the big picture. Our objective is superior academic experience, developing global citizens, inclusive practices that support all students, things that we've done over the last few years. And I honestly wish I could take credit for some of them because they are phenomenal, but I can't take credit for most of them because they happened before I got here, but I still want to recognize them because they are in some cases phenomenal, but really expanding computer science. So that fits in. That's part of what's our challenge, student retention. It addresses that. Expanding engineering and technology, same thing. Our Spanish immersion program, it's been around long before I came, and we will continue to grow it. It's a strong program. At some points when it's really popular, it's a lottery, and only those that get chosen can get in through the lottery system. And then there's other years where everybody can get in, but it is a strong special program for the town of Maynard. WAVM Chapter 74 program, the radio station, huge. So many high schools have some semblance of that, but we have an FCC certified radio station. That's monumental. And the kids who are involved in that, they learn skills, they learn, how to run a radio station. And when they get to college, because I've heard this from people on the screen, they have had experiences that not all other kids have had in learning how to do that. So we want to expand that. The Senior Project for All, I've heard it repeatedly, both from people on this screen and outside here, that it's the gold standard. Lots of schools have senior projects, but it's not for all. It's for a select group. It's for your National Honor Society students or the kids who want to participate in it. For us, it's everybody, and it's phenomenal. It's well established. It's thorough. It encourages critical thinking. It's a powerful senior project. So it's something to be proud of. Co-teaching in the younger grades to help all students. And that works. And finally, and I think I was going to say Justin, but he didn't speak today yet. So either Greg or the chief recognized the director of building operations person who we've taken on. But as a school system with 3 buildings and a large chunk of the financial pie for the town, we need somebody to help manage our buildings and our facilities to make sure that we're making the appropriate choices and within upkeep and moving forward, preventatively and looking ahead. Next slide, please. So where are we going? So we look at our pathways, and that's part of our strategic plan. And for us, that's our compass. That's how we decide, is this project good? Is this curriculum, does it fit? So we look at our pathways, and it needs to match with our strategic plan. What are we looking for? Opportunities for student choice and student voice. Personalized learning opportunities for all students. And we really want to expand the option for college credit-bearing coursework in high school. Some kids do it and they know about it and they do it, but we want to get more and more students involved in that. If we do that and do that well, it's totally reasonable. It takes a certain kid, but totally reasonable that a student can go to high school in Maynard, graduate, and have an associate degree at the same time. So you will have 2 years of college paid. It is doable. Other investments that we're making and continue to make to support the pathways is increasing the WAVM electives, expanding engineering and computer science, and also expanding performing arts and biomedical sciences. So we're really looking at what do we hear that kids want to do How do we create classes? How do we expand their opportunities within Maynard for them? So if we're thinking ahead, and I like to think ahead, what would be good for us as a school system financially? What would potentially save us money? So one of the things that districts, and Maynard is no different than every other district, that we spend money on is kids that we can't service properly. So we have some programs in place now. At the high school, we have a very successful OASIS program, and that stands for Ongoing Assistance and Support for Independent Students. That means those kids that would be out of district are able to come back and function in district and succeed, but they need a certain level of support. We would like to replicate that in the future. It's not part of this budget, but I want you to know where we're thinking, because it always comes back to revenue, and this potentially saves money if we can build these programs in a year or two. We have it at the high school, replicate that at the middle school. It's more kids that we would be able to service inside the school system. And likewise, we have the Tiger program at the middle school, which is more of a behavioral support program for some of our students. We'd like to replicate that at the Green Meadow. Because we know that if we can build those programs, and the direct result of that is more students will stay in district. Now, we don't have to pay for a special education tuition. We don't have to pay for transportation. It's in-house, and we can do that. It takes a little bit of money. We're gonna have to spend a little to save a lot. But that's kind of in the future. But I want you to know that's what we're thinking about. And then preschool, we're looking at expanding our preschool programming to be 5 days. Sort of enrollment dependent right now, and I think we're at that point where we will be able to do that for next year without spending that money. So just to wrap up, I know I was trying to go quickly, but I think most of you have heard most of this. The big change, I think, is that we recognize where the town's at. We recognize where the country's at in the middle of a pandemic. So we came back with a slightly lower ask. Instead of 21.8, we came back with 21.4 because we think we can do a solid and create a solid maintenance of effort budget for that number and do right by the students of Maynard. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate the presentation. Lydia, do you have anything else before we move on? Just to.
I do
wrap-
not.
Okay.
I want to be cognizant of time.
No worries. All right, sounds good. Then if everyone can, if they have any questions, we can hold them for Brian until we come back from the break. We'll move on to the overview of capital improvement plan by John Larkin, I believe. No.
It was going to be John Canchola.
Sorry.
John, can you introduce yourself to the Brady Bunch screen here?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm John Canchola, a member of the Capital Planning Committee. John Larkin had some family obligations today, so he wasn't able to make it. So I volunteered to step in and show some slides. So let me share
John.
my screen. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you if you had it.
Yeah.
Great.
Yep. So hope everybody can see that. Is that
Not yet.
Okay, there it goes.
It's
You
coming.
gotta-
It's on.
You got to click the share button. So that's
It's up now.
yeah, cool. Thank you. So yeah, this is Capital Planning Committee. It's again, this is my first budget cycle that I've gone through. So this has been a very interesting practice and a great learning experience, seeing kind of the nuts and bolts that go into the budget process here. So it's been exciting. As far as the Capital Planning Committee goes, let's see, where's the control? Kind of disappeared on me. This is the work that we've done over the last few months. So we weren't an actual committee until fairly late last fall. So we jumped right into the middle of the budget cycle for fiscal year 22 and jumped right into working, trying to put together a capital improvement plan for this coming fiscal year. What we did first is we gathered all of the capital requests from all of the town departments and created a centralized projects and purchases list that we can kind of refer to and work with to prioritize the spending for this coming year. We built a capital planning model. Now, this is something John Larkin kind of took the reins on this and built an amazing Excel database that allows us to play with numbers, play with priorities, and kind of dump out some nice charts and tables of our recommendations. He put a lot of work into that. If you see John Larkin, you know, I think he deserves a high five or a round of applause for the work that he put in for building that Excel spreadsheet. So the next thing we did, we went and we looked at the need, and this year, just with in the process this year, we had to prioritize all of the projects and purchases based on the absolute pressing need, as reported by all of the department heads. And then in addition to that, we went ahead and authored a capital spending plan. So what does that look like? So this year, for the fiscal year 22, we're looking at $2.9 million for the total expenditure on capital projects and purchases. We're recommending funding of 19 projects and purchases based on, again, the absolute need as reported by the departments. Roughly $1.5 million or 51% of our recommendation spending is going to be funded by water and sewer receipts to start the process of fixing some of our water and sewer needs. Then we've also introduced roughly $122,000 for a new capital pay-as-you-go line item. Greg mentioned this earlier. It's something historically over the last few years, we've been dependent on free cash, which is not a consistent source of funds, but we will always have capital needs in the town. So working to establish a new capital pay-as-you-go line item is kind of the goal. We also include $870,000 to service the new fire station debt. After all of our work, paring down the requests, we're left with roughly $5.8 million of unfunded requests. These are things that we're our needs, but they're not the pressing dire needs, but will eventually need to be funded. So the projects and purchases that we are recommending making. This is the list of the 19 projects and purchases. You can see a lot of this has to do with expanding our water system. Oh, and of course, my mouse has a hair trigger. Yeah, so a lot of this is expanding our water system, helping to, and that hair trigger keeps coming up. Where are we? Some new software for both the library and the school district, police cruiser, equipment for the fire department, and the new fire station. So how does this look as far as our recommended spending per department? Roughly 53% is spent on the Public Works Department. That obviously includes the water pump upgrades, well expansion, and sewer pump upgrades, things like that are absolutely needed and funded through the new water and sewer rates that were approved last month, I believe, or earlier this month. So some things to highlight, obviously $187,000 for the school district, second year of the Wi-Fi upgrade, some renovations for bathrooms and general district-wide renovations, and a new student information system, which was a high priority for the school district. Other things to point out, we are recommending spending some the golf course some of the golf course revenue in order to fund a new roof for the country club. The library, upgrading some software that they have. Pretty much everything that we're looking at, it touches all of the different departments in town, and we're trying to get all of their needs met. How this breaks down by funding source. So can I hide this? So basically up at the top, we're talking about the new fire station debt. That's one of the biggest things one of the biggest items in our plan for this year. That's obviously funded with the new debt. We also are looking at, so for the ambulance, the new ambulance, we are using those ambulance receipts to fund that lease. The country club roof at the golf course is going to be funded through the golf revenue. So the big thing are the tax receipts. That accounts for $366,000 of the total capital improvement plan for this year, or for the coming year. The big thing is our new capital pay-as-you-go line item, $121,924. That includes purchases of some new servers for the town, some equipment that the fire department needs, and our, of course, new student information system for the schools. Below that, this is the impact to the department operating budget for their capital needs. So the town needs some new computers. Those happen all the time. And that's going to be absorbed by their operating budget. Fire department, some protective equipment, and obviously the library software is also going to be funded by the library department's operating budget. Then free cash. These are the items and purchases that typically all of this we would end up playing around with free cash numbers, but this right here, roughly $200,000, we're still dependent on free cash. And then the big purchases, and the vast majority, roughly 51%, we're recommending be funded through our water and sewer receipts, and those are directly related to costs of maintaining and upgrading our water and sewer system. I mentioned earlier, we have roughly a $5.8 million project and purchase backlog. And this $5.8 million does not include a new Green Meadow school. These are all projects and purchases that have been identified as a need by all the different departments, but it's a lot of money. So it's just something to keep in mind, that as we go through this process, year after year, this list will continue to grow if we aren't able to fund things as we move forward. So our goals for this, for moving forward, what we'd like to be able to request review with all of the department heads and the town administrator. This will allow us to continue have a continuous discussion about the capital needs, so that we can kind of refine the backlog and refine the backlog, project future needs, and obviously follow up on the status of previously approved projects and purchases. Right now, we don't have any kind of processes for checking up on the capital purchases and projects that we've approved. So that's something we'd like to do moving forward, so that we can make sure that you know, if we are funding bathroom renovations, we know that those renovations are being made. We also would like to refine our prioritization process. This year, we have operated under a reactive dire need process. That's not necessarily sustainable moving forward. And we would like to be able to assess future capital spending on a proactive and more objective basis. We also are starting the work on creating a 5-year capital spending forecast. A lot of the capital requests that we received this year are recurring expenses. They're things that most departments know that they expect every year, every 5 years, every so often. So being able to project what our capital needs are going to look like 5 years in the future will allow us to better budget for our capital needs in each individual year. The last thing we need to do as a committee is start the work on building a capital inventory. Right now we have a few different spreadsheets that say, oh, we have this equipment, it has this expected lifetime, but how old that list is kind of a question up in the air. And building that capital inventory will also allow us to better forecast what capital needs are coming in the future. So these are our goals for the coming year, and hopefully it'll help us to better predict our capital needs moving forward.
Thank you, John.
So that's it.
I had a quick question. I know that we're trying to hold the questions, but while we're on it, if you go back, or you don't have to go back to the slide, that's fine.
Okay.
The water and sewer and how it's funded, I don't know as if I quite understand that part. I don't know if we've seen that in the past on the other budget meetings. So I'm just trying to understand how that's funded and what, because I think it said that we're funding it with water and sewer rate increases.
So the water and sewer, some of these items, and I'm just going to bring this back up again so that you can, that I can talk about it while we're going through it. So these, I believe were, I hide this, I can't.
Oh, we can see, John.
You can see it? Okay. Yeah. It's covered by the screen share thing.
Oh, no, we can see it.
For me. Okay.
Yeah.
So the water and sewer, that's kind of what this table is for. So these are the capital improvements that the Department of Public Works has requested, and they come from our water and sewer enterprise funds. And those water and sewer enterprise funds are funded through the water and sewer fees that we all pay as we use our water, right? So that's what these water and sewer receipts indicate, right?
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I speak, please? Justin DeMarco, DPW Director.
Sure.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks, John. Thank you for this wonderful slideshow. I just want to kind of clarify some of what is in front of you right now. We just had the Board of Selectmen, acting as the Water and Sewer Commissioners, approve upcoming rates for fiscal year 22. The rates do not include any of these capital projects. The only capital project that is included is the jet vac truck, and that is not included in the rates. That is included through a transfer from retained earnings. So we are not capable of funding these capital items. So I just want to make it clear and make sure the expectation is real, is none of those items are included in our upcoming rates. And as such, we do not have a revenue stream for them currently. So they will be passed on to potentially FY 23-24.
Okay, so from what you're saying, the SIP system upgrade, the backwash lagoon cleaning, the pump upgrade, and the pilot permitting are not moving forward for FY 22?
Correct. None of those are included in the recommended rates.
Okay.
If we included all of those upgrades in the recommended rates, we would be looking at the teens as opposed to 2 and 3%.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, it looks like we have some review to do, and kind of goes to the point. This point, the top point here is we working with Justin a little bit more to make sure that we have everything in line.
Absolutely. And this was not, you know, that wasn't actually a question on you guys. I know that you're a fairly new committee, and I know that you're working really hard with the information you have. So it absolutely was not, you know, a slight on you by any means. I just want to make sure that moving forward, we understand. Now, do you also factor the CPC, like what could be funded through CPC in the Community Preservation Committee funding as well? When you showed at the end the needs that are kind of in the pipeline, have you thought about trying to identify what could be funded through that, or would that be an individual department's responsibility to figure out?
So yeah, we've been working with Greg to try to identify the appropriate funding sources for these projects and purchases. So CPC, I'm not sure what kind of regulations there are on that right now, but it's definitely something we can look at in the future.
Great. Thank you. And because I did open the door, sorry, everyone. Does anyone else have any other questions for John before I throw it to a break real quick?
I have a quick question. John, thank you very much for the presentation, especially if you were called to task without knowing it on short notice. On the project backlog list, the one thing that I missed on that list, and you know, it's just always in the pipeline and always needs to be recalled, but I don't believe we had anything in there about any senior center. And that is always going to be a request that's out there. I know it's a multi-million dollar potential project, but it was not there, and probably should be added to the list because it's always going to be a consideration from our seniors. And you know, when we'll get to it, God knows, but if it's not on the list, which has been a problem in the past, you know, almost 20 years ago now, I sat on the capital planning committee, and some of these items were on the list then. You know, we just passed the fire station. It was on the list 20 years ago. So if we don't have it on the list, it gets forgotten. And then, you know, it becomes a surprise when suddenly, oh, where was that? So just a comment. But again,
Yeah.
thank you very much for the presentation.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. Yeah, this list was built off of the requests that we got this year, and I believe some carryover from last year. So it's, yeah, we'll try to add that moving forward.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else have anything?
I did, Justine, Natasha Rivera.
Oh, hi, Natasha.
Hi, I don't want to hold everybody up for break, but maybe this is something we can talk about after. Just was noticing that the Green Meadow bathroom renovations had been removed from the capital planning. And so maybe that will be a conversation piece we can revisit after break.
I think we just rephrased it as facilities. Like we didn't say Green Meadow bathrooms. We said, John, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, yeah, that's handled under the general district-wide renovations.
So there was a 40,000 originally for Fowler district-wide, I think on the draft proposal, and then there was an additional 20,000 allotted for Green Meadow. And again, this was the draft previously. I think what we see now is just the 40,000. It does include expanded district-wide, but the dollar amount attributed for bathroom repairs is reduced.
That's
So, okay, so there it is different, right? It is reduced.
We reduced it.
Okay, all right. No, I just wanted to clarify that it's not actually expanding. It is a reduced amount for that. And I don't know if, I know this is some new information for the school department as well to have. So I think we might want to think about impact in returning kids to school and bathroom and how that might play into. And I'd also wonder with the items that Justin identified, what that might allow for school bathroom to be, Green Meadow to be put back on there if those items are not going to be funded for capital.
No, wait, hold on. It's completely different funding sources. So Justin was referring to utility rates. Okay, so and retained earnings is still, we still got the retained earnings from utility rates. So
Okay.
so when you pay your water bill, that goes to a different funding source, a different bucket of money that we spend all this other stuff on, right? So
Right.
you pay your water bill, I can't use that money to fix a bathroom.
Right.
Okay, so just to separate those. And then the bathrooms thing, we can't pay for everything. So we try to pay for as much as we possibly can. And then we expanded to meaning like you can pay for whatever you need bathrooms wise. You don't have to spend that $40,000 on just this school or just that school.
Right.
At the end of the day, you come out, you get your bids back and you only actually need half of the amount of money you actually needed. Then you can spend the other half on the other school. Like, so we try to kind of do the most good. That's what we try to do.
I hear that. I definitely recognize that it is certainly not an easy thing to prioritize. It just was a new piece of information that had not yet been made available. So
Sure. If you feel like you can't open the schools on time, that information should be conveyed to, I presume, Tim McFay, Brian Haas, Justin DeMarco, myself. We will definitely make sure that the schools can open.
Thank you.
Okay. So then I think we're going to take 10 minutes. Ken, you good with that?
Yeah, start back up at 11 o'clock.
Start back up at 11, and we'll just do perspectives and discussion after that. All right.
Just sent them, Becky.
All right. It is 11 o'clock, and to save time, we're going to continue to be prompt. Let's make sure that we have, so I have David, I have Armand. Let's make sure I have Jeff. I'm missing Jeff. I just don't see him. Oh, there he is. Hi. And I have Chris, so all of our board is back. I was told during the break that Finance Committee has a presentation. So Ken, if you would like to do your presentation first, we can do that out of order. And that way we can do that presentation and then we'll wrap up from there. Does that sound okay? Oh, you're muted.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So, good morning, everybody. I want to thank everyone who made the last four presentations. I think the last four presentations showed a lot of hard work that's gone into executing budgets over the past year, as well as giving us good picture of the challenges the year ahead. I'm thinking back to a conversation that I had with Justine and Lydia via email the other day as we were planning this meeting, and Justine made a comment, which I completely agree with, that the town is sitting much better off than even just a few years ago through the work of a lot of people to make sure that we're communicating the priorities and resources that we have and that we don't have a realistic view of that across the Maynard community. And so, certainly those three presentations, those three presentations show that. So I just would want to, acknowledge that about that. I think it's also worth noting as we talk about this that while, everyone in the town has been dealing with the COVID pandemic situation, our town staff, the school staff and so forth have been as well. So it'd be hard to sit here and ignore the fact that if our town is running well during the coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic, it's due to the work of a lot of hard people at executing that work every day, from the teachers that are teaching and the rest of the town who are making sure that potholes get filled and fields get taken care of and stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. I think it's also worth noting that a lot of boards and committees have been working on all of this to make sure that the viewpoints of various of the entire community is being brought to this. And I say that not only to express appreciation for the committee's hard work, but also to sort of note that, for those who are listening to this either directly or via Facebook, that if you have perspectives to offer up, certainly through the boards and committees that you see represented, this is a great way of going. And I guess I'd also want to recognize the fact that there's a lot of people who have contributed to making sure that these budgets, the budget pictures, go forward. That it's not always just the people who sort of have the visible roles, but whether it's Angie putting together projections of growth, or Colleen Andrade who's putting together gathering information to support budget projections and so forth. So a lot of hard work that goes into that, and I just want to express that as we start off here. So the Finance Committee brings a perspective into the joint budget review as the party who is supposed to look at the town budget, other warrant articles, and explain those to town meeting voters, make sure that they understand the ramifications, not only in the near term, but also looking outward. And so, so just to provide some context for our town's budget, first couple of points you've seen in the past. We're a micro-urban community, and so we have a lot of the infrastructure and service demands of larger urban communities, but we don't always have the resources that those larger communities have. And in many cases, the state aid that we're getting is less. The larger communities get more and are able to sort of focus that on certain areas, but Maynard, being as small as it is, doesn't always have that luxury. We also have made decisions in the past that create implications for us around a regionalization of services. Many towns are dealing with their budget challenges by regionalizing, whether it's in school or, or fire or police or what have you. And the voters of the town of Maynard have decided that they don't want to do that. And so that directs us a certain way in terms of the budget. And we also have people, families who are choosing to send their children to charter schools. And charter school tuition is actually a really big hit on our budget, over $1 million in reduction to our state aid. And so certainly one of the wonderful things about Maynard is we have choices of where to send our children, whether it's to our public district schools or to our VOTEC schools or public charter schools. And so that's one of the great things. But one of the things that presents a challenge is that, the town is now having to fund a larger educational picture that includes not only the Maynard Public Schools, but Assabet Valley, and then the charter schools, predominantly AMSA, but there are others as well. And that takes, that's a large reduction on our budget. As I just got done saying, a lot of people around the town have worked hard to make sure there's healthy communications. So we have a town budget subcommittee that is purposely designed to has members from each of the three major, the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, and Finance Committee, as well as active participation with the town administrator, finance director, the Maynard Public Schools superintendent, and the business manager from there, to make sure that the current picture and current directions and trends are getting communicated. And I can't tell you how critically important that is. That's just, I can't overstate how important that is, because that is a critical part of us being able to respond to the challenges. We've been able to respond to the COVID challenge. It's largely due to the great communications that we had set up. And so, of course, that brings me to the fourth point here, which is our greatest challenge right now to developing a budget, is the uncertainty around the impact of COVID, the COVID pandemic, not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. And we'll be dealing with that. So as the Finance Committee started to gather its thoughts in preparation for this meeting, we found ourselves equally conflicted and trying to wrap our arms around this. And so as we're trying to look at the budget, just like the Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator, School Committee, Finance Committee, and it's in preparing for our role in communicating to town meeting voters our recommendations around the budget, we're realizing that the impact of the COVID pandemic is going to be a significant thing. Fortunately, Town Administrator and the Board of Selectmen have made the decision to pursue what has been our past practice and making very conservative estimates around things like revenue projections and department budgets. And the Finance Committee certainly supports that. Nevertheless, this is going to be a changing picture. And so we think that town meeting voters need to understand that they're going to be voting on a budget in May, but we're going to continue to need to address this. And we may have a fall town meeting where we're going to continue to deal with that, just like we did this past fall. The Finance Committee urges continued forward thinking and reality-based multi-year planning. Most of our focus at this point, particularly in this year where there are so many unknowns, is taking a look at the current year budget, but really looking at the out years and looking at the trends that are going to affect that is very important. And communicating the realities of that to town meeting voters so that so that they're aware of sort of the larger context of the decisions that we're making. We've done that a lot. A good example of that was this past year as we were looking at funding the fire station. Many of us were talking about how long this had been a priority, and that we needed to act on this, that it was not going to do anything other than get more expensive as we continued into the future. And in particular, that while it looked like a big expense, a decision not to go with a new fire station was not a $0 choice, that there were financial impacts of that. And again, that's sort of that reality-based view on that. So we're certainly wanting to take a look at that. So continued economic uncertainty will make this difficult. We want to continue to be very conservative around how we spend our stabilization funds. We've done that this past year with the study for the proposed new Green Meadow School, wanting to move forward in partnership with the Commonwealth through MSBA to get funding for the school and some future year. But having to make those tough decisions in a tough tax year is very important. There's critical need to focus on generating more revenue sources. We cannot balance our budget by continuing to reduce costs. There's no way that's not going to be able to happen. At some point, and we're really at that point, we're already starting to see places where services are not what the taxpayers expect. And, whether it's, potholes in your, potholes in your, on your streets, whether it's perhaps priorities at the schools that are near and dear to you, but maybe are not being funded fully, anywhere across the town, we're not really in a position to be able to reduce expenses. And so the town is going to, in the long term, have to really look at ways of increasing revenue sources. Now, many towns that have, huge potential for development, they're fortunate in that way. We have, relatively speaking, fewer opportunities to do that, and we really need to take advantage. So things like Maynard Crossing, that was a project that was many, many years in development, and a lot of people were wondering, how is this going to change our town and so forth. We have to pursue those development opportunities. So the Finance Committee also has a view that capital projects, education, and enterprise fund needs are underfunded. We don't have enough money to do everything we'd like. We have a Green Meadow School that is going to have to go through renovation or replacement. Of course, we've got a study to take a look at that and make recommendations. And that's a few years off. Funding that renovation or that replacement is a few years off, but we really need to be taking a look at that. We also need to take a look at water capacity and other infrastructure improvements because in part, not only do we need to make sure that these stay in a good state of repair, but in fact, we need to increase capacity in some ways in order to be able to generate and sustain some of the development projects that we would like to see. So this is a list of some of the budget priorities as we see it. Now, I wanted to bring up a slide that we had last year where we were talking about some longer term assumptions. We've not been able to update this to bring it into this year, although we certainly think that the general trend is still the same. And so while the numbers are from last year, it's important for us to keep in context the fact that the direction of these trends is still there. So this is our operating budget without assuming any sort of override of Prop 2.5. And so in other words, just maintaining the budget increases that are allowed under Prop 2.5. It does take into account the fire station and the Green Meadow School and what we've done with the new Green Meadow study. So this was the option that did that. And it had some assumptions around new growth as well as charter school expenditures, which may or may not be based in reality at this point. But I want to bring up the slide in the lower left because this was one that we focused on last year where we saw that eventually we were seeing trends that suggested that tax revenues were not going to be able to keep up with the expenditures that the town would need to have, and that we would see some significant increase in budget shortfalls over the coming year. And so we were assuming that that we would need to have a Prop 2.5 override for the operating budget at some point. Now, like I said, these numbers are not right. They're last year's numbers, but the trend is still there. And I think the Finance Committee is concerned that by focusing on the current challenges only, we may be missing an opportunity to be responding in the longer term. And I don't want to, I don't want to minimize the challenges that we're facing right now and the amount of hard work that everybody's doing in order to make sure that we're facing the immediate challenge. Okay, I don't want to minimize that at all. What I do want to say, though, is we do need to keep an eye towards the future. So from our perspective, path forward is in the near term, continue to look at ways of raising revenues. Maynard Crossing and other current projects that we have is an important part of that. A recreational marijuana shop opening, that'll be an increase to tax revenues as well. Some credits from the solar panel installations. We'll want to be taking a look at that and whether installing those will be justified by the revenues that we would have. As Representative Hogan was saying, and others are speculating, there may be other COVID relief that will be coming in the current year with the new administration. In the longer term, we need to make development a priority. The Powder Mill Road corridor is an important part of that. That is where a significant portion of our business district lies. We already have businesses there, but we could continue to develop that. Fortunately, we have a study group that's looking at that right now, which is great, but we do need to be looking at what the longer term impacts of that. And of course, we have Mill and Main, this great resource in the middle of our town, as well as our downtown. And we want to continue to try to fill those resources as well to make sure that we're getting the maximum revenue out of that. We also really appreciate the presentation from the Capital Planning Committee. The CapCom, although it's very new, is starting to get its arms around capital planning. And you already heard some great things around that, around doing some capital. So there's really three areas where they're going to be looking. They're sort of the planned projects that we have, some which get funded, and that was on the budget. Some which are not yet funding, we don't have funding for, and some, like David Gav was talking about, the senior center project, very important project, as is a number of ones that aren't even on there. And so continuing to look at that, coordination with the Community Preservation Committee, and making sure that potential opportunities to use community preservation funds to fund these projects would be important as well. And so with that, I think I'm done. And I will turn it over to you, Justine.
All right, thank you. So I don't have a lot that is prepared as far as Board of Selectmen perspectives. What I wanted to say real quick is kind of echo what Ken said, is that I am extremely proud of our town and our town staff and the committees of the way we've navigated the budget for this past year and in preparation for FY22. We continue to encourage fiscal responsibility with all departments. That will continue, I think, ad nauseum, because I don't know a town that doesn't work very hard towards fiscal responsibility. I don't know a town that doesn't cut different things out of their budget every year. I don't know a town that's fully funded. So, but I am extremely impressed with the amount of work, amount of conversations that happen between the town staff and all of the different boards and committees. Because that part of it is, I think, very unique. I don't know a lot of towns that are having these many conversations and are this open with each other as far as how we're going to move forward together. So I really do appreciate that. You know, I am excited to see what comes in FY22 for the FY23 budget regarding coming out of the pandemic. Some of the state and federal aid, hopefully, and really getting to see what the increases in revenues might be with the different opportunities that are going to be coming up with the 2 marijuana retailers that are licensed and hopefully ready to open shortly. Whatever is going to happen on Powder Mill Corridor, what kind of development we are going to see there in the next year or so. So I am really, I'm really excited about that as well. I would like to turn it over to my fellow board members. Does anyone have any questions, comments, their own perspectives? I am the chair, but I don't speak for the entire board when it comes to this stuff. So anyone?
I would echo your sentiments, Justine, on a lot of the issues you commented on. I think that as we look forward to the future, and in many ways, I'll agree with Ken relative to the need to look at the economic development opportunities around town. But I think the place that we should really focus ourselves on, the mill we can work with as much as we can, but I'm not. We've been working with them for many years, and they still continue to struggle to find people to come in. I think the Powder Mill Corridor for commercial development is really where we should focus our energy. And that's our area of development. And so when we have people coming in looking for opportunities, if we can come together and agree that that's where we should look to send people to find potential opportunities, then there's a consistent message for town hall. They don't have to keep coming back to various boards saying, what should we do? So I think if we can all come together and coalesce behind a development plan that we all can agree with, I think we might be able to get behind some of the answers to some of these issues that we're dealing with. With the mill, we can continue to work with them. I just hope that they have a plan themselves. I just don't sense that there's the consistent plan that we get from them. There was rumors of, we all saw it 2 years ago when they said that they weren't interested in marijuana. And then we hear a few weeks ago that, oh, now maybe they are open to marijuana. And, that doesn't do us any help. That doesn't do us any good when we're trying to plan ahead ourselves. So those are my comments. And I do have a quick question for the school presentation that we heard, because we never had an opportunity to ask questions on that. And Brian, thank you very much for the presentation. You had mentioned the senior project, which I love. I mean, I've had one daughter participate, and I'm looking forward to next year when my second daughter gets to participate. But you mentioned that it was a revenue generator, and I'm wondering where the revenue from that comes from, or is it more or less just a money in, money out balanced budget for the senior project? I'm just interested in what type of money do we actually generate from that project and how?
Great question. Did I say it was a revenue generator?
I thought it said that it would, when you had your the screen
chart?
up, I thought it said that it was retention and revenue.
I think just,
I thought
it does.
that's what my note says.
No, your notes are correct. And it's not related to revenue, except that student retention is indirectly related, or maybe directly, depending on how you look at it,
Okay.
related to revenue. The more students we keep, the more.
I get that aspect. And so I just thought perhaps there was some money coming in that I was unaware of relative to that project. So, or relative to that thing. But again, fantastic program. I think the kids that get involved love it. I think the people that, those of us who have had the opportunity to participate, however minor, have loved it as well. And I think from what I gather, the kids really get a lot out of it. So, and we're already talking around our house about what my daughter wants to do next year. It generates that type of, enthusiasm where they start thinking ahead, which I think is great.
And would you like a little more information on that, David?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm fine. I just wanted to make sure that if there was revenue, I wanted to know where it was coming from and how much we were talking about, but it doesn't sound like there is any. It was just the way that was written.
Well, if you want to hear from Assistant Superintendent Gaudette, she has something to say on that specific topic.
Oh, then absolutely. I won't hold that up.
Okay.
We
Thank
don't
you.
have current revenue that's coming in from that, but what we are able to do is apply for either early college pathways or career pathways through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, where significant grant resources are being allocated there. So for example, we are applying for the Skills Capital Grant because of our WAVM Chapter 74 program. We're applying for resources, over $100,000 to replace equipment. If we were to create, for example, which we've been mentioning, a biomedical pathway, because we have the senior project, we already have that part of that program established, we would be able to apply for grant resources in that area. So perhaps when we were creating the budget presentation, that was sort of the thinking behind it, is that potentially those funds could be coming in to support those programs.
Great, thank you. That biomed sounds exciting. Especially for kids who are interested in nursing or anything like that, that could really build up. Greg, I have one quick question for you. And if you don't have the answer, that is fine. My question that I had for your presentation was, do you happen to know what, and maybe Ken, you might be able to answer on behalf of the Finance Committee, at the end of the year previous, did we have any balance in the reserve fund? You talked about how we went up to $300,000 on the reserve fund number and $250 on the reserve fund number. Did we have any balance left?
From the last year?
Yeah.
We did. I don't remember. I don't know. Can you remember off the top of your head?
No, off the top of my head, I could look at it.
Yeah.
Typically, that means we're budgeting very well when we don't use all of that money. But it also, and I'm not advocating for reducing that amount by any means, but it's just wondering how close we come to spending it all. And then I assume that goes into free cash, anything that's left once we recap. So
that's a good point. So I think I like a good reserve fund. It gives me some peace of mind. I think everyone else does too. And this year in particular, we have a lot of retirements, and so so we know that there's a lot of sick leave buyback, which if I can pay for out of operating fund, I will. But it is nice to know that there's a reserve fund, which is a traditional use for that. The snow keeps coming, so yeah. that makes me nervous. And that's why that reserve fund is going to be, it could come in a clench or whatever the term is. It could really help us out.
And during the break, I happened to look to see that there is some type of expanding snowstorm coming. Justin,
oh no!
Listen up, on Tuesday, they're looking at it looks like now they're starting to increase the likelihood of an impactful storm, but we shall see.
Yeah.
So I'd also point out the fact that there have been years where we've had to increase the reserve fund in order to do that. So Justine, since David sort of kicked it off, I would, perhaps maybe we should invite the rest of the Board of Selectmen to ask, spend a short amount of time each asking some questions, and then I'll open it up to the Finance Committee members if they have questions, and then we could have a general discussion. Does that make sense?
Yep, actually, that's what I thought I did. So yeah. Anyone else other than David? So moving on, any other of my board members have any questions, comments, perspectives?
Justine, I just want to make an overall comment. I think, and some of you already have expressed that, the committees are volunteer members, and the hard work that went in to put these presentations together, it is something that we should all be proud of. A lot of passion and thinking and collective, I guess, working discussions to put this thing together. It's just unbelievable, just observing, and I'm very proud of the town and what's going on. And it's good to hear that the revenues are not as bad as they were anticipated. It's good to see that, potentially we are going to get some developments coming down the road. I serve on the study group for the Powder Mill Corridor, and I know that's going to be a future opportunity for us to start thinking about what's going to happen there and how is it going to be developed, especially having the river as one of the biggest assets we have along the corridor is going to be an opportunity. And then the other thing is that I always bring this up. We do have a master plan, and we all have to embrace the master plan, make that our blueprint, and each individual committee, department needs to kind of look at that. And I know some of us already have implemented a lot of those things that have been put into a plan. We all have to look collectively and collaborative. How are we going to build this town going forward? I always have a saying, you have to start with the end in mind. So when you plan something, you look at the bigger picture of where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And I think we're doing some fantastic work. We do have some great department heads, and it's led by, people in the town hall. And I just want to make sure that everybody starts thinking about where are we going as a town and how we're going to promote our town, how we're going to market our town. We have a lot to offer. And I think we need to start collectively thinking about that bigger picture, where we want to go and how we're going to get there. And we're on the right path. We have great people with talent and skills and knowledge and willing to put the hard work in getting there. So I'm very proud to see the road that we're on.
Great. Thank you, Armand. Jeff or Chris?
Go ahead, Jeff.
Sure. All right. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a bit more about the future and sort of the planning, really in reference to what Ken said, is that longer term outlook and some of the problems. And with my perspective sitting on the budget subcommittee for the last 6 months, and this is the first time I've really gotten a chance to express my views, not having been a part of this meeting, but having attended it several times in the past. So coming from the budget subcommittee, I see some, in my mind, very reasonable frustrations about the room for the opportunity for investment into the school district that we are unable to meet. And at the same time, as David, being my other representative from the select board on there, points out correctly, that to adequately fund these does impose a large negative on the town in terms of tax revenue raised if we do need the override. And so looking at what Ken has said, that this need for an override does look very real as we move into the future, and as much as new growth and development on Powder Mill or elsewhere could help mitigate some of that, it doesn't look like it would be sustainable going into the future. But this does not seem to be the right year, because we are in a recession related to COVID. The personal economy for individuals in town is difficult. So I think it's very, I've seen all these points raised before by various members of this group, but I don't think I've seen too many people say it in one breath, that there are major opportunities and there's a major challenge. It's always seems to be the finance committee and the school committee saying we have these opportunities, and the select board pushing back, no, we simply can't. It's not possible now. It's not the right time, and on and on and on. So I think it's incumbent for the select board to sort of assess what are the right conditions in which need to be met, where an override is absolutely going to be necessary, and start looking towards, as Armand said, what is that long-term picture? What's that end goal, and how do we get there? Because it seems like it will be needed at some point in the future, even if it's not needed. So I just wanted to get that conversation started now in advance, being it'll come up in the next couple of years. And I think one thing that we don't talk about in the budget subcommittee as much, we talk about the school needs, but today we saw a better presentation that there are a lot of unfunded townside needs as well. So this is really a joint effort that needs to be combined. And that's why I was glad to see that capital presentation with some combination there. We're also looking at water and sewer, which comes from a different funding source, all in one spot. So we can see sort of all of these improvements and needs for future improvements. But we have street paving deficiencies, tree maintenance deficiencies. We have room for improvement in snow and ice removal. We have a depreciated stabilization fund that we're going to want to start putting money back into if the economy improves, as we all hope it will. Need for the deputy fire chief, and then the $5.8 million of unfunded capital projects that John Canchola pointed out, and the senior center. that David Gavin pointed out. So I think that's kind of what we could be doing with more money. I think those are all great opportunities for investment. I think that they're worth the money that would be spent on them. But one other question I don't think we have talked about as much that would be necessary to put that in front of the voters is, are we spending the money in our current budget effectively? And I think if we were to ask that question here to the people at this meeting, we would get a different answer than if we were to ask your average town meeting voter. I think there's still a gap in the perception on how we are spending money as a community, and we could work to fix that gap. From the select board side of things, I think it will be important, and I've talked to Greg about this, to do a department by department level review. This also will meet several of the goals in the master plan, to make sure that we are spending our money effectively. I know when we talk about these individually with the department heads, there's always sort of this nebulous kind of comparison. We can't directly compare ourselves to other cities or towns because we're different, unique, and that's true, but we never have the time to go and take an in-depth look, except maybe on water and sewer over the last year for very obvious reasons. But I would love to see that in-depth look for every single department. Not saying that we have a problem, but we want to do this in a very transparent fashion to say, yes, we are spending your money wisely. So when it comes time to ask for that override, we can have that confidence that the voters already built in. And so I think we could do a great job. And that's not something that, it's something that should be done on a certain cycle at a certain time frame. So I would love to see that start to happen. And then the schools, obviously need to do the same to make sure they can convince town voters that they're spending their money wisely. And so it should be a balanced effort on both sides. So I think that's actually the harder question than what do we want to spend the money on? And then the other thing is we've made a lot of improvements, as has been mentioned several times. So we need to find a way to get those improvements out to the voters, whether it's as we start to align more to our financial policies that we've put into place recently. Every time we make a small improvement towards that, we need to get that out there to voters and let them know that we're doing a better job of managing their money. As we get these capital plans, we had a few, once we get the presentation that John presented, make sure that gets out to the public and says, yes, we are looking and effectively prioritizing what the demands of the town are. And we know it's difficult, but we are taking this hard task of competing priorities and deciding what's necessary. If we're property budgeting for ice and snow removal, as Greg mentioned, we make transfers in how we budget that so we can better fund that instead of free cash. Point that out to the public, saying we're making these efficiencies as we go along. Same with water and sewer if that comes up. The other question I would have for the FinCom is, as we move forward, does it make sense to have a single large override, or is it better to do several small overrides if you sell that in advance? So if you start with your smaller one, say, we don't want to hit you all at once, but maybe for the next 5 years, we're going to do a smaller override and let you know that that's the plan in advance, so it's coming down the pipeline. This is something we talked about in water and sewer and how we're setting rates there. Or maybe we do it, 4 years and then we take a break for a few years if we say have a new school building built and then come back on to finish it up. So I would encourage the FinCom, if you haven't already, to think more detailed as we get closer to the eventual need of pushing forward for it on what plan we want to go forward with. And I think there's benefits and drawbacks to both. I saw you on mute, Ken. Give me a second. I'm almost done. I'll finish up real quick. And then the timing of that might be with the economy, right? So if we start to see a recovery and we have small increases, and then all of a sudden, the next recession comes a little sooner than we hope it would be, we have the opportunity to pull back and wait until the economy improves again. So the last thing I want to say is I think it's also important to look for other funding sources, and one that we should all be doing is pushing on our state legislators. I'm not sure if Representative Hogan is on, but I do think if more of our local schools especially, but also for the general town local aid is paid through a state level income tax instead of a local property tax, that stands to benefit Maynard and is something that we should be advocating for. So that can help take some of the burden off of Maynard residents in terms of paying for much needed services, whether it's on the town side or the school side. So I think that concludes most of my comments. But I just want to echo the comments that Justine said at the top, that it's very impressive how we're able to get together and have these conversations. And so I'm hoping that we can catalyze some of these and get a bit more certain about what we want in context of the very difficult moral decisions that need to be made. Thank you.
Yeah, and I won't go into the whole override issue extensively, but just as a reminder, there's two parts to the override process. There is the initial planning of what are the issues, what are the shortfalls, and having a discussion about that. And then there's the actual vote on that. And I think that even if an override, even if an override is not approved by the voters, that first part is a useful part to have a discussion about the priorities that the town has, what the shortfalls are, what the options are, and so on and so forth. Again, whether the vote goes yay or vote goes nay, that first part is very important. So
I agree, Ken, and I want to repeat something that Mary Brannely had said in one of the budget subcommittee meetings recently, is that even if the override does not pass, there's value in simply bringing it to the town voters for them to make that decision as well.
Well, and to not only to make the decision, but to understand the ramifications of deciding one way or deciding another way and understanding the options. The Prop 2.5 was never intended to sit there and say taxes should never go up more than 2.5%. It was meant to say we're going to engage in a thoughtful conversation if they're going to go up above 2.5%, and that's part of that override process. So,
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Ken.
Can I answer David's earlier question? This is Alana. I looked it up in the minutes. I believe, David, last year we had still $172,370 in the reserve fund. This year we already have, I haven't seen just the latest, but due to the sick leave buybacks, I believe we're up to about 100,000 or more already. Yeah. So just to answer that question for you, David.
Thank you. And Chris.
Greg's up in the corner doing sign language. No, just to just reiterate what everyone else has said. It's a great collaborative process, and the fact that we're all volunteers doing this, on our basic free time and under the circumstances we're all living these days, it's impressive that we're able to come together and have these conversations, and that they get us to the point where we're supposed to be. Not always in agreement, not in agreement on every number, but it's a great process. And to Ken's point, the thoughtful conversations about overrides and those things are definitely things that are going to have to take place sooner rather than later, based on all the conversations we've been having the last 2 or 3 years. And but it doesn't make it any less painful for anybody, especially some of the people in town who are not as financially fortunate as some other people in town. So it's a difficult conversation to have, but it looks like we're headed in that direction. But I had a question, and I don't know if anyone, how often can you do an override, Greg? To Jeff's point, where he said, however many years can you, I thought there was a limit on the, I thought there was a limit on the frequency that you could request an override.
I don't know off the top of my head. That's a good question.
There is no limit.
I don't think there's a frequency
limit at all.
Right.
In other
Thanks,
words,
Mike.
you have towns there's 2 towns in the state of Massachusetts one that had 3 overrides in a row. So there's really no limit. The limit depends on the voters, really.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing is, we've done as a town, I think in terms of the COVID-19 crisis and everything, as a community, and you look around and you read some of the notes and things in other communities and their local papers and stuff, we've done a fantastic job as a community throughout the process. So kudos to all those in town hall who've been involved in that process. And it goes without saying that Mike Guzzo who's on the call, has participated despite the fact that he's retired, and certainly, she's not with us today, but in Cheryl's contributions, those things have been huge, and they were huge in getting us to where we are as far as COVID's concerned. So that's all much appreciated too. But as far as, the budget numbers, I mean, it's not the same every year, but it's kind of like a Groundhog Day thing. Just need to find the money. And to David's point and Armin's point, it's, the opportunities are few and far between in town, but the Powder Mill Corridor is certainly an opportunity, and hopefully we're allowed to get close enough to the river to use it to our advantage in terms of conservation and EPA and DEP and all those other acronym organizations that control those things. So I look forward to that, and look forward to Mr. Nemzer's presentation in March, beginning of March, on continuing that conversation about Powder Mill Corridor, because that's really the only land we have left to develop and have an opportunity to make a big impact. So that's really all. But thank you everybody for the participation and helping us get where we are today, and look forward to the follow-up conversations with the FinCom and the school committee as we get closer to May 17th.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Ken, I'll turn it over to you and the Finance Committee.
All right, thanks. Lana, did you have any questions or comments to make? I'm just going to go down the list here.
Unmute. I think I'm all set for the moment. I have a lot percolating, but
Okay, that's fair enough. Peter? So I don't see him coming on. Jill?
I think I'd like to echo, the spirit of collaboration that everyone here has been talking about. We've really come together as a community to get through this. And, I'm obviously a volunteer on the Finance Committee and not a health expert, but I did also want to throw out there that, looking at the numbers on the Massachusetts website of officially reported COVID cases in Maynard, there's been around 500 or so cases out of our about 10,500 population. So, that's less than 5%. And for us to get to where we need to be to get back to a new normal, we'll have to vaccinate, probably about 70%, I think is what the experts have been saying. So, we still have some ways to go, I think, and being cautious, particularly on the use of stabilization and other funds, is something we should keep in mind going forward.
All right, Kelly? Sorry, Peter.
Sorry, Ken. I had to unmute in two places, I guess. And I'm just going to note I didn't have anything that I wanted to raise now.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Kelly?
So really the only thing I wanted to bring up for this group is I think this meeting is super beneficial for everyone, including all the town voters. And I would recommend that going forward, we have this a little more frequently. I know this is a mandated meeting, but I would recommend, I know we have joint budget subcommittees and things of that nature, but not all of the committees are necessarily involved in that. And I think it would be very beneficial to all of us if we did this a little more often. Looking through all of this documentation, there's a few things that are off here and there because, we don't necessarily all agree on prioritization of funding yet. And things haven't quite settled out, obviously, because we're still fairly early in the process, as you stated, Ken. But I think in echoing a lot of what Jeff said, but also I think we could still improve some communication amongst the committees and staff.
Great, thanks, Kelly. And Tom?
I don't have any particular comment except for what, just to follow on what Kelly was just saying, is that it might be helpful to have what you'd call a state of the town meeting in the fall, before the budget process gets really started, and opportunity to tell everybody what the issues are, that what the issues in each department are ahead of time. That would be my only comment.
Okay, great. And last, Elliot, are you on? I didn't see him on, so he may not be on. So I guess, I guess I already, sort of had a chance to talk about many of the comments. I guess the one thing that I didn't get to elaborate on as much as, so we were talking about the Powder Mill Road corridor study. I'd like to see us do the same thing relative to the downtown, and think about ways that we could do that. We've got a number of stores that are moving in and out, and that's a good thing. Opportunities for new stores to come in, and so I'd like to see that we spend time not only thinking about Powder Mill Road, but think about the downtown. And I guess, the Mill and Main would be included in that, but I really would, we have limited opportunities for generating new revenues. And I think we really need to push on both. And if we need to get a full-time economic development person in order to really, push on, on this, really, in many ways, the town has a lot of advantages that I don't think we're necessarily taking, that we're publicizing. We may not be on 128, we may not be on 495, but we're, close to where people live. And so it's a good place to set up business in my opinion. So I guess that's the one thing I'd like, like to do.
All right. Thank you,
Bill.
Ken. Does anyone else have?
Bill has his hand up.
Oh, Bill, do you have your hand up? I'm sorry, I didn't see you there.
Well, this is good timing, Ken, because it just so happens last week we were awarded a technical assistance grant for the downtown area to develop a recovery plan that builds on what has been learned during the COVID shutdown and can use that as a foundation for going forward. So I will, we just received notice of that, and I haven't even received the official notice yet, but everybody will be involved in that, and I'll make sure you're all updated. So that should be something we can work on this year.
Yeah, excellent news. Excellent news.
Great, thank you, Bill. Does anyone else have anything else before we, Lydia? Oh, no, hold on.
Hi. So I just wanted to rebut something that was said earlier, just to clarify the comment that was made about the Student Opportunity Act and the fact that there may be potential funds coming. That's not completely accurate. The 37,680 that is reflected in Greg's budget and comes from the governor's House One budget is unlikely to change. And even if we were to receive more money, the SOA funds have requirements attached to them, and they can only be spent on certain things. So it's not like that money will go into the general operating budget. We have to spend it on the plan that we submitted to the state when we explained to them what we would use the SOA funds for.
Okay. All right, and so just so I understand it, Lydia, so that is, so basically whatever you're planning on spending the Student Opportunities Act, that plan that you put forward to the state, it is not something that is currently being provided to the students at this point?
Nobody showed the town engineer the plans.
Nope, Bill, were you talking to us? Sorry. Sorry, Lydia.
That's correct. It's money that we, for instance, we wanted to utilize it for improving the literacy program at Green Meadow. Brian or Jennifer, do you want to explain further?
Yeah, I can take that. So if folks recall sorry, Brian.
Go ahead.
Jumping on top of. So if folks recall last spring or last winter or so, we sent out a survey. We were required to poll the community on a series of projects or series of actions that would help improve the district. And so we have to target it to those things. The improvements that we identified were twofold. One was improving early literacy, and then the second one was improving the implementation of high quality curriculum. And so the proposed budget for the 34,000 was to support that. The plan, if you notice, I believe it's up on our website and also submitted to the state, far exceeds the 34,000. So we were intending to allocate a portion of that to the literacy coordinator or administrator at the Green Meadow School for those pieces. Additionally, we allocated funds for resource attribution so we could get some curricular materials for that. But I think our overall student opportunity plan is somewhere north of 150,000. You'll notice that there is purposely overlap between the extra positions that were requested in the budget request and the positions that we put into the Student Opportunity Act. Because again, we feel that we want to be very strategic about how we make improvements. And so a long answer to your question essentially is that if those extra positions are not funded through the operating request, we were hoping to be able to allocate a small portion of that, the 34,000, or we would be required to allocate a portion of that to some of those initiatives. But again, we won't be able to fully fund the plan because the plan far exceeds the amount of extra funding we're getting from the state.
Okay, all right, thank you. But again, so that means that you could use Student Opportunities Act money towards other things that are currently in the FY22 budget. Like the early literacy, like towards that. It's not the full thing, but it towards that.
Well, so I just want to be very clear about what part of the budget those are in. I believe I know that those are in the extra position request, not the level service or
right. Yeah.
I can't remember the term, Brian, that you used for that.
Maintenance of effort.
Maintenance of effort budget. So those are not included in the maintenance of effort budget.
Okay. All right. Lydia, did you have anything else?
No, I don't. I'm not sure. I think Natasha and Mary had comments.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Mary.
Okay, thank you. And like everybody else, I really appreciate these opportunities that we have. I'm fortunate to be on the budget subcommittee. So Natasha and I know a lot of these numbers ad nauseum, but just a couple of comments. And one of them was, Ken, I really appreciated on an overall basis, the fact that you're also incorporating the downtown with the, the infrastructure, because we do have Mill and Main, we've got the downtown, which being on the Maynard Business Alliance, I know that they're doing a lot of work too, to really try and work on that piece, but also the Powder Mill corridor. So all those things combined are essential for the overall well-being of our community. And then as far as the education piece goes, I wanted to, obviously we realize it's a very difficult year. We appreciate the budget as it is now, but if there is any way that we can get to that 21.4 number, and it speaks again to what Ken said, which is, for every dollar that goes out with our kids going to, Assabet and or the charter school, it's incredibly detrimental to our school system on a dollar for dollar basis, but it also negatively impacts what we can offer to the other students that we have. If anybody was able to see the presentation last week at the school committee meeting, it was pretty cool, actually. Brian had his coach there, and he happened to see a program of studies up at the high school, and it would blow you all away as far as what's being offered up there for our students. And the coach happens to be a retired superintendent of schools at Bedford, and he was so impressed. My point for bringing it up is we can't go one step forward, two steps back. You know, there's been so much hard work to create programs to keep kids in our school system at the high school, and also we're trying to do the same, especially at the elementary school, because, you know, for fiscal reasons, if we can create programs within our school district, we're a lot more apt to keep our kids, which is going to be a plus for the entire school system and the entire economies of the town. So that was all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are at 12 o'clock, but we'll finish up. So Natasha.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I also just wanted to really thank and extend my appreciation again. I don't think it really can be done enough this year to all the staff and at the town, the school department, for all the work that they've done, and for my peer volunteers, residents who have been on boards this year. It's obviously been a very difficult year. And it goes without saying that personal sacrifices have been extensive for all these folks, all in the name of the greater good for our community in Maynard. And so I just wanted to make sure that's another opportunity to recognize that. And I think that we have, you know, being part of the town budget subcommittee at the school subcommittee, I think we really have some great people in a lot of new roles. One of the things that, you know, to echo Jeff's point, and this is an ongoing conversation we're having at the school department about how can we do a better job of, you know, building that confidence in the criteria that we're monitoring during the year, showing how we're building that process, how the decision making is happening, to what the school department is asking, and really engaging the stakeholders and having information more available to, you know, to the town to see that. I think that's really an important piece that I feel very strongly about, transparency in our decision making. And I think we obviously owe that to the town to be able to see that, so they have confidence in why we're asking certain things, and things don't come up just at budget time, which kind of seems to feel like what happens right now. And so internally, the school department, we are working on how we can better address some of those components. It will obviously take some time because we have new people, but getting to a place where it becomes part of our financial health is really key. We're looking at quarterly reports and how we can, you know, build those in a way that capture and the message with maybe commentary that highlights those trends and needs that we're seeing during the year that can help inform the budget process a little bit better. And something that recently I shared at the town subcommittee with Greg, and because we've also seen that we have these new policies that are have been created, and I think it's something that every department really needs to look at, and how can we, you know, show and their taxpayers really how that budget process during the year is occurring. So whether it's, you know, what you budgeted, forecasted, what you're expensing, what's encumbered, and then highlighting those trends. And I think that at some point, I think we have some really great people in place to work towards that. It will take time. I certainly also believe, because we've had a lot of turnover in leadership positions in the past, you know, I would say probably 3 years in many departments, that I, you know, would agree that a financial, you know, review is probably a good idea. It takes money to do that, but I think that identifying if there are ways that we can be better efficient in any processes that we you know, might not be doing now is probably, I know many companies do that on a regular basis. They build it into their, you know, process every 5 years or whatever. And I think that is something that I certainly think that the community would be appreciative of, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. It could be how invoices are processed. It could be shared resources a lot of different things. And so I appreciate all the work that everyone has been put towards these budget conversations, and I look forward to continuing them. I really do. We have some great conversations, and I appreciate everyone's knowledge and what they bring to the table. So thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Lydia, do you have anyone else who wants to speak?
I don't believe so. I think we're all set. Unless Brian, you want to finish up with anything, or are you good?
I'm good. Thank everybody for allowing us to have our presentation and for the collaboration and for the willingness to really take a broad look at the town's issues, obviously from my perspective, including the school, as I advocate for all the students and staff of Maynard. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I will extend the same to Greg. Do you have anything for us?
No, I'm not going to talk last. Go ahead.
Ken, do you have anything to wrap up?
Frozen.
Oh,
Ken is being very still.
Ken is frozen.
Nice man.
All right. Well, then, hearing nothing else, I again I echo all of the committee members. There is a lot of work that still needs to be done. There are a lot of conversations that need to be done. I am grateful to everyone for having the conversations. I think that sometimes, we won't come to the same number on things, but it's important to know the conversations that happen behind that and the reasons behind that. I see Ken's unfrozen. So Ken, do you have anything else?
No, nothing else. Good. Just to express the same appreciation you have. It's a great conversation to have, and I'm glad we have these review meetings at this particular point juncture to sort of get together and talk about these. Obviously, the conversation will continue over the coming weeks and months as we prepare for our annual town meeting. But it's a great opportunity to get together and sort of level set expectations.
Absolutely. Thank you. So with that being said, let's see, do we all have to adjourn our individual meetings? So,
Yes.
why don't
adjourn.
the selectmen go last? So if the school committee, maybe we want to go first?
Sure. All right. So roll call vote to adjourn. Mary Branley.
Yes.
Jessica Clark has left already. Bethlyn Houlihan.
Yes.
Natasha Rivera.
Yes.
Lydia Clancy. Yes. And thank you again so much for allowing us to participate and be a part of this process. These conversations are always great. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lydia. Ken?
Yeah, so I'll take a vote to adjourn. Lana?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
And I also vote yes.
All right, thank you. And I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All in favor, Chris?
Yep.
Armand?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And we
Take
will.
care, everyone.
Yeah.
we'll see you all soon.
Be nice to
Thanks,
your
everybody.
Valentine's.
Thank you.
Oh, Armin, I'm gonna get you some flowers.
Thanks.
Today's my wife's birthday too.
Oh,
Hey, happy
congratulations.
birthday, Lindy. Hey.
Double whammy.
Yeah.
It's actually triple whammy because my daughter's 18th birthday was
yeah.
yesterday.
Oh my gosh.
And my wife's birthday is today, and then Valentine's Day is tomorrow.
You got a great weekend ahead of you.
Store.
That's a trifecta.
Great celebration for weekends.
There you go.
Enjoy.
See y'all.
Bye, guys.